You see, something is going to happen. Something wonderful.
My God, it's full of stars.
Welcome to the Occult Rejects. On this episode, we are back to Magi's Behind the Mic. I think last time we did this, I had maybe mentioned that it was something I would like to continue doing. Unfortunately, probably not as often as I hoped to, but we're finally back at it. And this time, I kind of wanted to pull one out of the hat that was like a little weird. I mean, maybe it's not that much of a surprise to some people, but I actually thought covering these clowns might be a surprise for some people. I know there also are a lot of people who I guess automatically think that they're probably like Satanists or this and that, or bad occultists, bad magicians. This show, like I had said about the last one when we did Pink Floyd, I'm not here to necessarily say they're good or bad. I will give my overall opinion, which really shouldn't matter all that much to everybody else. It's still up to you and for you to make the decision. I think they're actually misunderstood, and I do think that they use horror and sex just like everybody else does with sex to get people's attention. Or silly perverted shit in horror. But I do think when it comes down to it, really what the whole thing is that I actually do think they're occultists. I do think they're magicians. I actually think that they know what they're talking about. Due to some of the stuff that I've seen in Dark Lotus, I think that they're probably into the Kabbalah maybe, or other stuff. But I definitely think that Violent J and Shaggy 2 Dope and a lot of the people that they even mess with, DJ Paul from 3-6 Mafia, I mean, I think that's kind of a given right there. Ouija Mac, I think you just got to take a few looks at him. I mean, the guy's got a 17 tattoo on his face. I mean, that's even another interesting thing that I think even with ICP, if there happen to be any Q fans that still tolerate my show, which I appreciate, that's what's up. If you think bad things about these dudes, you have to start to question what's up with the number 17, because they pushed out a lot as well. Which, again, is because they're occultists. And Ouija Mac is rocking that 17 on everything he does. So, long story short, I asked Jin if you'd be willing to cover ICP. I think a little bit like me, once I had made the decision to cover that topic after the fact, I think I was a little intimidated about covering it. There's certain things with them that I was going to cover on a kind of a single that they did that World Star Hip Hop actually made and put out. So, I mean, I guess they can't be too bad if they're helping them. That I thought was actually very deep, and I might touch on a little bit, but like I actually think in that song they're even describing the whole inside of your eyeball. I do think they get down, to that extent. That for me to like really hammer that home, that probably would have taken about an hour, and I really just honestly I don't think the topic is worth even getting into all that. But I will touch on some stuff where I even do think that they play with gematria, and I even do think they understand the eyeball and the brain. So now enough of that. We got Jin with us. Jin, what is up? Thank you very much for coming on. And let everybody know what your deal is in case, some of the new listeners I have now don't know who you are. And please let them know where they can find your work.
Sure. So thanks, Nick, so much for having me on. It's like always an honor to be on and part of the Reject crew. I love everybody on the
Yes.
that fucks with us. And I love being on the show, and it's it's great to be in front of a big audience. So, so shout out to my show is Threshold Saints. It's on Spotify and Anchor. I'm working on Apple Podcasts. It's just taking a little while. So totally free, not monetized or anything. You can also follow me on Twitter at Wukong Reborn. I'm quite entertaining there. A little like naughty sometimes, but like I think tolerable. And I've been doing a lot of interesting work on my show's really about Asian metaphysics, but also just metaphysics in general, through the lens of like a popular culture, but like a kind of nerd culture, video games, anime, and just discussions with people who I think are talking about metaphysics, but maybe they're not magicians per se. But maybe we're all magicians, and so every conversation I have is magical.
Yeah. I think even, not to pat this guy on the back or repeat something he said, but like, I think even Aleister Crowley has even kind of like said that, like, we all practice magic, believe it or not, and you can't help but do it. like kind of almost existing is magic in itself.
Yeah, it's 100%. That's 100% true. It is a wonder. We live in a world of wonderment, and creation is amazing. It doesn't mean it's always great. Just it's amazing, and we should acknowledge it and appreciate it. So I agree with that.
The highs and the lows, just like sound itself in music.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and we already got Lisa's already letting us know Q is the 17th letter of the Latin alphabet. You know, I had mentioned before we like even get into it, I found was interesting. I think I had mentioned it on the other live I did. You know, even with like, you know, QAnon and like that whole 17, and you know how like they're big with like JFK, not JFK, but RFK, you know, thinking that he's still alive. Well, I don't know if like you know this, but like even when it goes to like, you know, when JFK got shot, you know, all the like the weird like shadiness around that. You see it get hit in the side of the head, but then they're telling you he got shot in the back of the head, and they're showing you the bullet of the head. Q in Hebrew would be like, I think it's QUOPH, would be so like quaff or whatever. But like, you know, a lot of like, well, not a lot, all Hebrew letters do equal something. You know, ox, this, that, closed door, or open hand, closed hand. Q is back of the head. So I did find that interesting. I'm like, if Trump gets fucking popped in the back of the head before the election, I called it first.
Well, I also think it's interesting because obviously the skull cap, so the top part of your crown, some people have, and there is this idea of the Jacob's ladder in Kabbalah, that the top of your crown is also like where Kether is. So that's also really interesting. And so what is Q trying to say?
Yeah. And I have said, and then we'll get on to the topic, but I have even said multiple times in the past, like when I've had magical experiences, I mean, I've even questioned the whole little Jew hat they wear. That's exactly where it feels like my soul's being sucked out of my body before the magic happens.
Well, you'll
I
find
swear
this really
it's
interesting.
like right
Nick.
there.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this is the thing. And so people are familiar with me. I practice Tantric Buddhism. I talk a lot about Tantra. Nick and I did a long form art series about Tantra. Everybody can go check that out, of course. But the Bengalis, so the word for Bengalis or Bangladeshis, this was prior to partition, but Bangladeshi or Bengalis in general, the word for their people is Bengal, which means skull cap. And I think that's very interesting, given the support for a specific country from another specific country. There's a lot of things that are much more similar than they are different. I'll just say that.
Sorry, I forgot I muted myself.
No, that's okay.
You know, something I did want to add before I ended up kind of like forgetting about it. You know, I'm pretty sure I have Jin's stuff in there now, but I do highly suggest, you know, he talks about stuff I can never talk about because it's not my thing. I really do think that he's very good at what he does and what he touches on. So if you're into that type of stuff, I do highly suggest to please go check out his show. I think it's very educational. It's very informative, you know, which is why I have the man on my show, because I like his style. So definitely go check out his stuff. I just wanted to make sure I put that in there, man, you know?
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, no, for real.
Coming from you, it's very meaningful, obviously, because it's a full circle to even have a show. It's obviously I started out with General Lee, shout out to him, and then I came on your show, and that was really the start. I mean, after a couple libertarian podcasts, so I really appreciate it, and it's been a really amazing journey, actually.
You know, not for nothing, and not even to pat myself on the back and Lee, but the amount of people that me and him actually have had on our shows that eventually went off to have their own, there's a handful of them out there. I'm not even trying to pat myself on the back, but I mean, I'm just being honest.
No, 100%, but I think
and it's great. I love seeing that. That's what I like, you know, that's why, you know, even the people that I have on my own show that I consider occult rejects like yourself, they all have their separate shit. I think you should go off and be able to do your own thing. Don't just be stuck, you know? So that's why I kind of wanted to pick people too that had their own shows. They weren't stuck with you. They had a different outlet. But I think it's great, like when you can see people do that, you know, be like a guest on something, or, you know, and then eventually be able to do your own work. Like, that's what it's about, bringing somebody else in, you know, bringing somebody else up. You know, it had nothing to do with like monetary gain either. Didn't have to do anything with me pushing your fucking merch. I was actually lifting a person up, literally, being, because you hear that a lot over in the fucking alt media community. We're lifting our brothers up. You're just trying to help motherfuckers sell shit. That's all the fuck you're doing. I'm actually trying to help motherfuckers educate people. Big difference.
No,
right,
I
so
agree. And
Nick,
I would have never had like the balls to do my own kind of like long form series if you hadn't done the 2 series. You already know this, but if you had never done the Kabbalah series and the Scarlet Horse series, I never would have been able to sort of pick up. And I wouldn't say I built off your work, but I definitely think that it inspired me greatly to kind of give it my own interpretation and kind of look at the tree and through my own lens. So, I totally give you credit, and I shout you out a lot. Everybody knows. I probably name drop you. People are so tired of it, but I mean, you're the coolest dude, and Thanks. So I have to.
Thanks, I appreciate it. All right, so now on to the topic. Sorry, I had a cough there. I actually wanted to ask you, not to put you on the spot. What was it? What was your first thought when I even asked you to cover ICP with me?
So I was nervous. I told you this.
Were you like, what? Who? Or I probably already mentioned it to
I've
you.
known who they are. And now it's not my kind of like, I actually like their music. So I've been listening to their music all weekend. I actually enjoy it greatly. I love the song Miracles, but I was like, this is a little outside of my zone because there's a lot of strong musical people who I know, like people who have, and like, a lot about music. It's very intimidating. But I think actually once I started listening to the music, watching the videos, reading the lyrics, I kind of had, I don't know, a lightning strike moment, honestly. It kind of came to me in the last 3 days, and I was like, oh my God, I can actually do this in an interesting way. That is like genuine to me, where I'm not copying anyone, but then also like we can converge on the Kabbalah stuff. We can converge on the, I'm not good at tarot like you are. Obviously, I always say that, but I think we can converge on some of these things because I've been doing a series on anime and occultism and anime with Monty from Nice, so everybody can go listen to that show too. But we have talked a lot about the Star card and the Fool card, and so obviously there's a Joker sort of reference in the Fool, and so something in that, doing that work also clicked for me in the last couple of days, and I was like, okay, this all makes sense. So I was not mad at you. I was like, oh my God, why did Nick ask me at first? But then I got it. So I'll say that.
I was mad at myself for picking the topic too afterwards. I was like, to me, never like, I'm sure the listeners can even understand this too. Sometimes it's just like hard to get something out of your mind that like makes sense to you. And it's like to try to like, it could take too much. Like I said, like there were certain things that I could have really, I think, hammered home, which would have been really impressive. But it was just like, for me to make this a 2.5 hour show for ICP just wasn't worth it. Whatever. For me, what's really interesting. It's funny. I didn't even know that you're actually a fan of them. That is another thing that I did want to actually mention as well. For me, even coming across them, for me, the Great Malenko and like maybe the Wraith album, a few songs on there. I would have to say for me, there's maybe 2 albums that I would actually say I kind of like. So like this isn't even like I'm not trying to promote them. I don't think like they're like the best thing, this and that. They're insane clown posse. They are who they are. Funniest thing is that the way I actually ever was really exposed to even this band was back in the day. I was young. I had to have been like 18, 19 because I was like just heavily getting into like kind of the rave scene. And a dude that I had worked with, he was a little bit of an older guy, and he was much more of like a metalhead actually, or a rock dude. But for some reason, he was like fucking, crazy with ICP. He really liked them. And I never really listened to him, but he would go on about them a lot, telling me that he really thought that I'd find them entertaining. And I got him to come with a rave to me once. And he had told me, he's like, I'll go to you. And he actually fucking loved it. But I got him to go, but the whole stipulation is that he said, you'll come see ICP was coming to New York. I think at like the Roseland Ballroom. And I was like, all right. And I think that the tickets were cheap as fuck. So I was like, you know what? It's like almost the same price as the rave. Like, I can't even complain. I was like, screw it, I'll go. Because like he's trying to sell me that like I would love it. And then after the rave, he's like, oh my God, you're really going to like it because it's just like a gathering of people like having fun and shit. And I went, and it definitely was a fucking wild experience. Never had so much soda thrown on me. That was one thing. It was like constant Faygo being thrown all over the place. And the one thing, and I'm going to cover this too once we finally getting into it, Dark Lotus. It was around the time that I think Dark Lotus was like coming together. And there was ICP, Twisted, and then Dark Lotus playing, which I think is ICP and Twisted together. And when that came out, like that was actually like fucking heavy shit. So I was like kind of like, all right, this isn't that bad. So like that, I remember when Dark Lotus came out, that caught my attention because it was like basically like fucking thrash metal with like, you know, like rap over it or whatever. It was, and like the weird thing is like I remember like I had, you know, seen them, I think like on TV here and there. I've seen their faces, and like I even thought it was weird and interesting that when they came out with Dark Lotus, I was like, yo, you have a completely different image right here. I was like, wow, this is like, to me, I found that interesting. And going back and looking back at it now, again, I really wasn't huge into them enough, I guess. But like when I came up with the idea of ICP covering them, I actually had forgotten about Dark Lotus and was like, oh, wait, let me go check out their stuff. And in my opinion, I think they were a little bit more open, actually, with Dark Lotus. To where it's like, I think, you know, me showing some of their stuff, I think actually will help too, showing that I think they're definitely occultists. You know, so I even have like some Dark Lotus stuff besides ICP. I mean, I guess technically it's them anyway.
I mean, even the name Dark Lotus, like just the name itself, that is like an obvious reference to obviously your eye series. You talk a lot about like the rose symbolism in the eye organs, but the lotus can also be like an alternative for the rose. And I even spoke about this with Greg Kaminsky, how the lotus is like a replacement for Rosicrucianism. Yeah, so there's something there.
That's interesting that you even say that because I had gotten, I'm not going to show it off. I just got a tattoo recently, and I want to add more stuff to it, and it was kind of like a remake of the Birth of Venus or whatever, you know, that thing that I show all the time that looks like the eyeball. Mm-hmm. And I had even showed the tattoo artist the inside of the eyeball and a few other things, and I said, I do believe this painting comes from the eyeball, and he was actually like, holy fuck yeah, it kind of does. Like, he didn't even argue. Actually, he was even telling me when he tattooed me, he was showing other tattoo artists, and they were like, yo, what the fuck? Like, they actually were like, yo, what kind of other shit is inside the eyeball? Like, they saw it right away. And I had him doing, like, another rendition of that. So, like, technically the tattoo is actually just an artistic rendition of the eyeball on my arm. And I was looking to add lavender and lilies and roses to go around it like a wreath now, kind of in a sense. And it's funny how you just mentioned, no, not lilies, lotuses. Sorry, what is it? Lavender and lotuses. Lotus is kind of like feminine, or even like a little bit of Isis in there. So I thought that was interesting. I just said lotus because like it's funny how like, again, even just going back to that, I was going to use a lotus tattoo as occult symbolism, even though it goes back to the eye. It was still like, you know, occult symbolism to me.
It's 100%. I mean, in Buddhism, at least it's described as the 3 layers, right? It's biologic, it's like consciousness, which could also be said to be spiritual or psychological, although I don't really think that's a useful division, but it will say consciousness. And then there's also the external, so whatever that even means. So I think that it's all happening. So I think that the eye can perfectly explain, and I think you did this with your series, is that the eye can perfectly explain a magical experience. Now, I recognize some of those things that you described in that series from my own experiences, both magical and meditative. So I know that it's real, and it's also our perception. So I think it's all the layers happening at once. But I think that you can look at the biological layer and say, like, this is exactly what's happening in the body. And I think that a lot of us have forgotten that there is like it's a very important layer that I think that you're one of the first people that I've heard in the greater truth or occult sphere to discuss it in this very fundamental way. So
yeah, no, I do. You know, I really wish I could have done more of it. Like, you know, I did have plans of covering.
We have to do the ears.
Yeah. I know. Me and Lisa have definitely talked about going into the ears and the brain sooner than later. But like, the thing is like, this is even like, I don't know. I guess just my opinion, it's part of like your magical practices. But like, there'll be even times where it's not even like there was even in the Eyeball series, I even corrected things on myself, how my opinion had even changed in the artwork as I was learning more about the eye, because there was like certain parts of the eye that I think Lisa didn't even touch on that I happened to come across and kind of like blew open a lot of stuff. And we were thinking about doing 1 or 2 more episodes on the eye to like really iron out like I think like perfectly this time. Not saying that the original series wasn't. It's just I think like we want to crunch, like we're more sure of ourselves, and like I think it's easier to crunch a little bit more and get a little bit more specific before we move into the brain. That I think will really like tie it up and make it work better.
I mean, the brain is where everything really happens, in my opinion. So I'm already there, but I do think the ears, like I'm really going to look forward to the ear one, because I think sound and light are the same thing, right? It's just different vibrations happening, but it's the same thing. It's just stretched out. Sound is a little stretched out. So I know that sound is really important in Tantra. It's really important in just magic in general. Obviously, the chaos magic, like the music you listen to, the things that you put in your head, that's an important concept. So, right? Yeah. So, yeah.
All right. So now to get into it, for me, basically what I have a few slides. I didn't go too crazy with that, as I normally would, surprisingly. I do have some stuff where I did run some things. I'm a little bit of that, but there is actually a lot of like songs and lyrics that I was going to tackle that I really do think shows some stuff. One thing, you know what, and I'll probably just get this out of the way so I don't forget about it. One thing I do want to add too is that, like, according to them, believe it or not, and I guess this was something that I had remembered from my friend Marco when I was telling you about that took me to the show. You know, again, like he stayed like a heavy fan. I was just like, yo, that was a cool experience. I never saw him again. I thought the Great Malenko was good, and I like some of the Wraith and a few songs here and there. That's about it. I remember when the Wraith came out, he was one of the fans that was actually pissed off, and I think I actually stopped listening to them as much then, because they did pull some God shit, where they came out at the end and said that they're actually all about God and bringing the Juggalos to God. And they do actually have a lot of interviews with them talking about God, believe it or not. Again, I know some people might be like, oh, this dude's just trying to make excuses of this and that. No, I'm just like actually just like literally covering like, you know, the evidence that I found and going by what they say. You know, and you know, one thing I do want to say, and I've done this plenty of times myself. This is why I'm assuming others have. If not, I guess I'm the only fucking asshole, and I'll take that. But there's quite times when I may be jealous of somebody else succeeding in life or having money or doing things that I wish I was doing, and easily turning around and saying, well, they're just fucking satanic and they're fucked in the end, and that's why they have this shit. When it's really like, fuck, man, I wish I was living that life. I'm keeping it real. I've done that plenty of times in the past. Out of jealousy, I label people fucked up shit to be okay with that person living a life I don't have. And instead of worrying about people's other lives, I just started living my own. So I guess like I don't look at it as serious anymore in some aspects, on some things.
What you just said, I think, for all like the young dudes out there who think that they're magicians, I think that's the best advice you can possibly give them. Honestly, that helps me. Like that, even for you to say that and me to hear it, even though I obviously have known you've thought this for like 3 years, you know, and it's hard. I'm not perfect. I've done this. It's hard sometimes to have good discernment and understand when someone is doing something. The form is evil, and also the, you know, the liquid or whatever inside is also evil. Sometimes it's hard to tell because people can use very ferocious things.
Sometimes it's the evil in me that makes me think another person's evil.
Exactly.
I hate to say it.
Yeah.
Being straight up honest. I was going to play a couple of things, and I'll get this out of the way just to get it over with, because I'll probably forget about it as soon as we start really get going. Here's like a couple of things. I think it might be mostly Violent J saying this stuff. One thing I do want to say, there was even an interview I watched where, like, I think like near the end of the interview, they were like, all right, we're just going to start asking you certain things, and you just say yes or no if it applies to you. And I think they mentioned something about neither Catholicism or Christian. And Violent J was like, yeah, I guess, like kind of like there was something there that you could tell that I guess he was like, well, with the thoughts and beliefs I have, I think I would fit as a Christian maybe. Shaggy was just straight off the bat, no. But I mean, I even found that interesting. Again, maybe he's lying so he can deceive all the listeners, even though they're not that huge. You know what I'm saying? That's even like another thing I haven't thought about. Like, how many people are they actually really deceiving if they're whatever? They're actually not worth that much if you put them up.
This is the thing. I actually questioned it after we had our little conversation.
Yo,
I was like, what God are they talking about? But at the end of the day, I can also tell from a magical perspective, they're talking about going upwards. I think that's their general message.
Yes.
Leaving the Dark Carnival, ascending through the 3 layers, the 3 stages, the 3 worlds. So, yeah, I think that they're talking about going up. They're going towards God. So whatever you label God, I mean, I don't have the same definition as a Christian of what God is or where he even would be if you use just like old-fashioned Kabbalatry. Like my idea is a little higher than even Kether. So maybe I wouldn't be comfortable saying like I'm a Catholic or I'm a Christian, but I'm Christian friendly because I understand what they're talking about. I think that's.
You see, like as a magician or as an occultist, like to an extent, I really do like. That's why sometimes I may favor. I'll be honest, I'm pretty sure people notice it, like Catholicism and Christianity. Because, like, for me, that style of imagery and that stories, I think I understand that better, and it just hits me harder. So it's easier for me to, like, kind of, like, use that or go back to that or identify with that. 100%. You know, even, like, with Gnosticism, like, that's easier for me because it has a little bit of Catholicism to it. You know what I'm saying?
No, there's a lot of Catholicism, and obviously,
and that's probably just due to my bringing up because I was brought up a Christian or Catholic, just like somebody else brought up as a Jew might ended up finding esoteric or Hermetic Kabbalah fucking easy. 100%.
Well, they would because it's a natural. You have the natural inclination to the system that you know the best, right? Because you're most familiar with the imagery, and then you use the imagery. If magic happens all in your mind, you use the imagery to propel yourself or your will or whatever in upwards or into material creation or material manifestation. So that makes a lot of sense to me what you said. It's very practical, and I'm very religion friendly. People have questioned me before, but my sincerity towards my religion is probably one of my most positive qualities as a person. So I think, yeah, I mean, I'm pro God. Like people do whatever they want, but I think it's good to, believe in something. I'm not against it at all.
And then real quick before I play this too, it's just another thing. Again, like this is just things that they said, and I have to say, I saw this one recently. It actually caught me by surprise, but I'm just going to, again, bringing the evidence that I found. I even did actually, like, sometimes I won't Google certain things to see if, like, other people covered work of occultism. But I actually couldn't, like, really find anything.
Nothing.
Yeah, I was just like, damn, this doesn't even help. But I found something where they were doing an interview, and Violent J said, we use the same tricks that Satan does to captivate your attention. It's just the difference is we're pulling you close to us so we could slip God in and get you to become a better person before the time's over. And I was like, fuck. He's like, that's why we use that stuff. He's like, we're captivating people that are already screwed up and they need help. I was like, holy shit, man. I was like, I don't want to start thinking about you guys being too good, but I was like, damn, I don't know. I just thought that was that just took me by surprise to hear from him. I'll just put it that way.
No, but you would know this better than me even, but like the double card, where does it sit? It sits between Hode and Yesod, right?
Yeah. Or either Hode, it could be Hode going to the sun or Mercury. Oh, my bad.
No, it's not your bad. I'm forgetting too. But I mean, even that like has that mercurial association. So you have in Hebrew, it's like the goad. In Tantra, it's also the goad, that like hook thing. It's not like a hook, like a meat hook or something, but it's, you could visualize it as that, or you could understand it as that. You're kind of bringing people into your understanding because Hode is such an important sphere for understanding. So you are using these wrathful images, very Tantric Buddhist. You're using these kind of ferocious forms that have in its
art. You're using art. I mean,
yes.
I would say that's all, believe it or not, Tahuti in a sense anyway.
Yeah, 100%. It's 100%. And he does like that sphere, I think, personally. And so I think that that would make sense. And like he's bringing that, and then they're making magic. So then there is obviously a relationship with Yesod, and then there's also a relationship with Netzach, and in some ways, because they have to manifest it, right? So it's all the three things really working together so you can sort of have an understanding of what's going on. And I think that that's okay. And they're kind of leading you through a theurgic process. They're just doing it in a, it's kind of carnivalesque. It's very, I don't know another word, but it's carnal ground. They're leading you through the carnal ground. I think I said this to Conspiracy Kyle, shout out to him, who also gave us a song to look at.
Yeah, that's true. I remember that song, actually. I remember that song.
And I just think like that's what it is. That's what it reminds me of. Like when I started reading about Dark Carnival, what it was, the different layers, because it's very interesting that there are different layers of conception within each sort of idea of the Dark Carnival. There's different entities that do very different functions.
Oh, and yeah, that's like the Joker cards, if that's what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm,
that is a good point. I didn't get into that, but you're right. Like on my end, I didn't get into that. Each one actually, like if you look at some of them, you're like, that's kind of like deep. Like.
It's really deep, and it's very like tantric Buddhist. Like it's all like if you want to say like the wrathful time kings, the Mahakalas. Everybody loves those on Twitter when I post them, because they have like these very ferocious faces. They're like gaping maws and fangs and all that, and it's really to conquer the things that arise, so externalities, but also it's the internalities. It's like your fear and your different sins and desires. So. I think that that's what they did. They created like a novel system using other hermetic tools and like a hermeneutic. They created like a system for people to ascend the tree. And that's not bad. It just is what it is.
All right, I'm going to play some of this real quick, and then we'll get into the notes. Here we go.
I believe that I don't know why, but I believe we've been extremely, unbelievably blessed and fortunate. You know what I mean? Whatever the higher power is that's blessed us, we call all of it the Dark Carnival. And so when people come up and say, you've saved my life, I was addicted to this and such song or such and such album helped me get through it, and I want to thank you. To us, we can't accept that credit. We didn't save your life, man. The Dark Carnival. The same thing that is blessing us. We're sitting here right now talking to you. That's because we're blessed. If you were to pass away, if something horrible were to happen and you or somebody were to pass away and you had to turn your crank today, right now, turn the crank, what's going to pop out? Is it going to be an angel or is it going to be a demon? Where's your soul headed if God forbid, somebody were to pass away? Where is your soul headed if you had to turn your own crank right now? Ask yourself. If you turn the crank, you know how you live your life.
Box.
See, to me, this is wildly imaginative. It's very creative. Tell me where this concept came from.
The Holy Creator. All right. I don't want to say God because I guess God means one certain religion. It could be Allah, Buddha, Ra. I don't know. That's where we said, basically, more or less, we said the carnival is God, And
we're not sorry if we tricked you. We're not sorry.
And we want to see all juggalos in Shangri-La. I mean, if you had your entire fan base waiting for you to say something.
To me, this is amazing. Creatively, this is so, sorry to cut you off, but creatively, this is so amazing because these albums, these 6 Joker cards, have spanned how long? 1992
14 years.
14 years. And then people get to the end of the story.
Yeah.
And they get this big reveal
They're
at the end.
waiting for what we're going to say. You got everybody's ear. Your whole people that have supported you. They love you. They've given us our career come true. Thank you to these human beings, these wonderful people. And they all want to know what you have to say. What are you going to say? Of course you're going to say, man, this is all about God, and let's all keep the party going in heaven, man. Let's keep it. Let's get it together before we die, so we can be together in Shangri-La. Like when you're 24 and you hear the 6 Joker card, you might not dig that. You might be like, how corny, how stale. But fast forward 20 years in your life when you're 44 and you've got 3 daughters, you might feel a little bit different about that last Joker card and what we said. You know, it's a message for life, forever. You know, not just for you
Not
at
for
that
that
moment.
hot summer.
So then tell me this quickly, Jay. So how does the
I think that was enough. That was good enough. Get across there, I think. So,
Nick, can I ask a quick question? Do you think he was doing magic numbers in that interview?
oh, you know, I didn't even pay attention, to tell you the truth. I didn't notice if you happen to, why he threw around certain numbers. I didn't even notice.
Well, he said if you hear about the, I forgot how many cards there are already. He was saying the 6 cards when you're 26 and you think they're corny or cheesy, and then fast forward 20 years till you're 44.
The 44, yes, I always catch 44. But I didn't even catch the other ones. See, that is interesting because like all those numbers like does kind of coalesce with Toth's Path I always talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And I let that slip. I didn't even catch that.
That's okay. You've been doing a lot of true crime. It's okay.
Yeah, that and believe it or not, I probably have 4 episodes like of notes and everything's ready to go and done. I just have to fucking record it. So like, there's actually, besides the true crime, I actually covered like 2 other alchemists from back in the day.
Awesome.
That's some wild work. Yeah, I'm really excited to finally record that. It's just it was a heady thing, and like I was able to actually, not trying to get off the topic and promote the show coming out, but I was actually, what I was happy about is, you know, one of the people we're covering is Heinrich Kuhnroth, and I was actually able to go to Yale and take videos and pictures of some of his books myself, and not to brag or pat myself on the back. I mean, you could go check it out now. I think, maybe I didn't drop it yet. Maybe go check. Should be on the website. That's up on the top of the live link now on YouTube, Occult Research Institute. My opinion, I think they're probably the best photos you'll get of these books on the internet going by, like what other digital libraries have to offer. Like I did close-ups because, I mean, like the art in these books are insane. It's like, it's just, you'll see, when you see it, you'll be like, wow, like you'll understand what I'm getting. I mean, there's just so much stuff that like in the pictures that you're going to see in a digital library, you're not even going to notice some of the shit that I'm like focusing on, and you're going to be like, wow. And I think like the message will be lost. You're not going to fully understand everything if you don't see everything that's in the picture. So I was really excited about that. And that took me a little bit because I was like, oh, you know what, let me push off recording it and let me go back to Yale next week. I went twice, actually, fucking 2 trips to get all these pictures. So I hope it comes out good.
I'm sure it will, and you know, I'm calling dibs right now live on air of that. When you do Alan Kardec, I want to do that one. So.
All right. So you know, there was some things I did run, like I said, with Gematria, just some like basic things I just want to go over real quick that I thought was interesting. You know, as occultists, and again, like I do think their song 8 Ways to Die, which is interesting. 8, again, the magician, and to die. And that is another thing that I want to add to, another reason why I wanted to cover them. It's just, you know, it's my opinion. I know it's probably not like a huge one that people agree with, or maybe they just don't see it. But I really do think a lot of occultism is in horror. And I do think that's like, you could look them up and they're almost considered like horrorcore something. I don't know, whatever. I don't know all these names anymore. I just used to remember metal and rock and rap and hip hop. You know, I'm still stuck in the 90s when it's like alternative was like the new like thing. I just had to remember that. And grunge. Like they're even considered like known for horror. And I do think that, again, I know I kind of said that before, but I do think like they use their horror possibly, I think, to, you know, throw occultism in there. That's just my opinion.
I agree with you.
Juggalo equals 885 in Hebrew and matches vampire, square pupils, and Minerval. Minerval I thought was interesting. Now, vampire. Reason I even mentioned vampire, this is going to sound crazy, but I really do think, and I even question even the snake sometimes on the Egyptian headdress. I do wonder if the fangs are kind of like the optic nerves, because if you look in your eyes at the optic nerve, it is almost kind of like fang shaped. It's or like upside down, but it is very much like a fang. And like if each eye has one, and they are both like kind of positioned in the corner, so it's not straight down. It actually kind of would look like, if you use your imagination, fangs. Just think of that. And now there's two parts inside of your eyes that has liquid in it. The front part has the water. The back part has the blood, where the optic nerve is. To me, I could see how you could show fangs digging into blood to artistically describe what's going on there. I know that probably sounds left field from my understanding of vampires and sucking blood, but sometimes I do question if that has something to do with it. And
well, I'll just offer this really quick: is that the snake is like the dragon, so the dragon of the eclipse. You're in Tantra, your right and left eye is signs of the sun and the moon. So you could that makes a lot of sense to me. What you're saying
I even think, and this is a bold claim right here, and again, I am not making excuses for Aleister Crowley, but when he talks about Horus clawing out Jesus' eyes, I think he's talking about the brain and the optic nerves going into his eyeball. Like, because they look like fangs or claws in the back of your eye. They really do. The optic nerves.
That actually makes a lot of sense too, because the dragons and the eagle people are always at war.
And in my opinion, if you want to have a magical experience, you got to shut them motherfuckers off anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that was part of the process to have magic, was that you needed to destroy your eyes, or at least looking out in this world.
So there's a lot of fun distractions.
Yeah, and then if. Again, maybe I'm giving the guy too much credit, but if you word it the way he worded it, nobody's ever going to think he's talking about your fucking eyeballs. Never. There's going to be like, oh, this is a reason to hate the man. So I had, Juggalo, Minerval. Then if you go into Simple, that's 73 in Simple. I found it interesting. Juggalo does equal Circus. Rotas, I put that down for like the Rotas thing. Hiram Abiff.
Okay, that's interesting.
Salve, Nimrod, Hermit, Shrine, Nineveh, and then Purple Lotus. Now, unfortunately, I didn't, sometimes like I wish I would just like write down a lot of things and then go back and then maybe erase it when I do gematria, but I did notice Lotus actually pop up a few times, besides Purple Lotus. So I wonder if there is at some time if there was play off of that. I think I have mentioned even in tarot cards, I have found this situation where I'll find gate, something on a tarot card will numerically equal gate, and then something else that is associated with that card will equal golden gate, and then another card there'll be egg and golden egg. So it's it's crazy as it sounds. I think there is actually some golden thread going through the major arcana when it comes to gematria and symbolism. So I just wondered if maybe something was going on here with the word lotus, or was it going back to just something that they used oftenly for numerical value? I don't know. But unfortunately, I didn't save all of them. I didn't save all the times I hit Lotus because it didn't dawn on me until this is the fourth time I'm seeing that now. It didn't match Purple Lotus, but I've seen Lotus a few times. I didn't fucking save it, but I did notice that on my own. Real quick, I was even doing this when Jim was talking. I was like, oh my God, I totally forgot to run Fago. Fago does equal eyes in English. And I did just add that real quick because, again, there's, I think, a few Joker cards and other things that might match your eyes. So I just figured I'd keep that to keep it going. I know I had mentioned before, I don't know if you want to add something about this song after I'm done, Jin. Or if not, you can maybe go on to something you got. But I'm going to cover the Wraith song, Walking Into the Light. The Wraith album, Shangri-La. That was even the 8th studio album, even though it's the 6th Joker card. It's the 8th studio album. And again, 8 is where, Hode and Toth would be, or Mercury. There's other people that you could put there too. So I even found that interesting. Again, that they have the song 8 Ways to Die. This is the 8th studio album, and they came out about God on that one. Just wondering if there's something up with them in the number 8 as well. The first song that I'm going to cover off that album is called Walking Into the Light. And I'm just going to read some of the stuff that they're saying. And I just think to me, just reading this was like, all right, it's kind of like, I guess it's a little bit deeper than I expected after listening to some of their other stuff. A presence can be felt by those who have followed the epic saga as told by the insane clown posse. It is a presence that is synonymous with the crumbling of time itself. Thus emerges a being so powerful that he can exist between both the land of the living and that of the dead. Now, again, right there, that's going back to me, my opinion, the Magician and Tahuti. Because that path, unless you stay out there forever, you're going to come back. You know what I'm saying? So, there is a, return. And, I think sometimes, I think when they talk about gods that can come back and forth, I think that's kind of like an abyss jumper in a sense. So I even found it interesting that they added that in there. He goes by many names, but is known to the living only as the Wraith. He walks upon worlds forgotten and descends from heavens faded to gray to witness the death of all mortal things, so that he may guide the departed upon the path that they have chosen. And then there's Shangri-La, I guess like somebody's yelling it in the background. Here is the story of the path to Shangri-La, the 6th Joker card, the Wraith. Only now will we truly understand the meaning of the saga. Each Joker card is actually none other than the echo of our lives. So I thought that was kind of like a little bit interesting to mention that came from them. I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to add on that, or if you wanted to maybe jump onto something of yours.
I will jump onto something, but sure. I did find that very interesting. And even when he's talking, like, I agree with you, it's definitely abyss jumping. And when he's talking about the sort of guiding the departed to another path, I thought that's a very interesting lyric, obviously, because it does directly relate to Kabbalah. And even like where he's saying he's in the gray, that again reminds me of the carnal ground. It again reminds me of when you and I did our series on Kabbalah and Tantra. And like Chokmah, that's kind of where that would be. It's like gray and smoky. Of course, smoke doesn't have to be gray, but if you don't have complete wisdom of what is happening in that sphere, maybe there is part of it that's mystified, that is still darker gray. So I think that there's something really interesting with that.
I would even say like even gray to me. I mean, that, yeah, Chokmah, I mean, that's high up there too.
Yeah, because you would have to cross the abyss, right? You'd have to sort of be on a higher
and that's I even say I think that's technically, I mean, I know it's like skipping 3 is a big, there's a big thing going on there, I think. I mean, that's like really when the magic starts kicking in, but 8, 6, 4, and I think 2 really is kind of where Tahuti ends, and I guess at that point, like, you're just dissolving into like whatever, something else. Like at that point.
Something else, form to formless, exactly.
Yeah, like at that point, you're definitely spreading out into much, I guess, wider world, or a whole new world. I've even like wondered, like, is I like, the Prince of Air? Like, unfortunately, it's like almost like, using that term would almost make sense of what happens in a magical experience.
100%.
It's like you just seep into the ether of existence.
Well, that's kind of the idea, is pralaya, right? It's dissolution. That's again, to just go back to the dark carnival idea, that is the whole point of going to the carnal ground, going to the place of transgressive ritual. It doesn't mean that you're doing the ritual, but it means that you're going through the processes to kind of get to this point. But you have to go through this idea of the carnal ground, or the ferocious place, with the demons, with the ghosts, with the Bhutas, with the Vitalis. Everything has to appear there, and then you conquer them, and then you move forward and you move upwards. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Like, then you would sort of be, it's like a liberatory magical experience, maybe then like a lightning strike back down through death experience. But you're doing something. You're doing something amazing.
I agree with that. I concur.
So, do you want me to go do my song?
Yeah. And then I'll do another one after you. Yeah, we'll
okay, like so I have Black in Your Eyes, which was co-written with Isham, who is
nice.
who is like yeah, I don't know if he's a Satanist, but he definitely talks a lot about Satan, and he's also like a horrorcore hip hop guy. So there's a lot of, I think you'll find this really interesting, which is why I picked it.
I actually
So
thought he was really good on that song "8 Ways to Die," and it's the only time I've ever heard of him was in that song. It shows you how much I actually really listen to this stuff. But yeah, Isham, I was like, I actually kind of liked what he did on "8 Ways to Die."
He's, you
And
know,
he got
he's
into, he said
interesting.
some dark shit that I actually think he was talking about the eyeball, believe it or not. I actually think
I
he was
mean,
talking
this
about
is
that.
the, we'll get into this. I have a song that is literally, well, Miracles also is like this, but then I have Yellow Brick Alleyway, which is very much about the eyeball as well. So I think we can safely say that both of us agree that something's happening in your mind, whether it's like in your eye or like in your brain, something's happening, and that's what magic is. At least that's what I think.
I agree.
So TikTok, obviously that's very banal to hear the clock.
Yeah, it's true. That's when time kicks in. Either that and the moon, I feel like would fit both.
Yes. You're right. And then the moon is really important, and Yesod plays like one of the clowns is like this purple yellow color. And if you remember from our Sid Barrett series, he did the album cover where he painted the floor purple and yellow. So there is something that's really interesting about that, and very Yesod, like how the light from Tipperith kind of descends onto Yesod, and Yesod kind of portions it out to Hod and Nutzhawk. I think, yeah, there's something really interesting that it would be combine yellow and purple, but they would remain distinct, so they wouldn't blend together. They would just descend together. So that's interesting to me. Might go psycho sick, like I interpreted that as being sort of like a motion sickness, because I know that in a magical experience I've personally had that, where you feel a little queasy. Filled your head with lead. Lead is the planetary metal of Saturn, so I thought that's really interesting. Tick tock, because I want you dead. Well, that's sort of where, that's the sphere that you would sort of die is Banah. So it's
Hell
TikTok,
yeah.
because I want you dead, TikTok, because I want you dead, TikTok, dead, because I want you dead. Okay, and then Shaggy Two Dope. Well, they basically, they're talking, in my opinion, they're talking about the Scarlet Woman. So what they say is girly bitch, da da da, and the interesting lyric that I thought was, I'm gonna F you until I break your spine. And why I think that's an interesting lyric is because the spine, obviously I don't use the Kundalini kind of metaphor as my way of describing it, but there is something, and I'm going to use it for this. So there is like a Kundalini thing that you could say is happening. So if someone's like,
well, I think it even goes back to the eye again. Is because when your pupil's one way, the canal is straight. The other way, it does curve like our spine and almost make an S. So, I mean, you never know. Talking about the eyeball again. I mean,
well,
like in my opinion, it's just me. I think when you start looking at the eyeball functioning, I think you can start pulling sexual stuff. I think you can start using stuff like that. I think like a lot of possible sex magic is actually describing the eyeball. That's just my opinion.
No, I agree with you. I think that makes a lot of sense of the sense organs, and then relating them into, yeah, because that would make sense from a tantric perspective, because then each
like
organ,
even if you look at like your pupil, I mean, I hate to say it almost looks like either a sperm swimming, or it could look like, I hate to say it, like it's going in and out of water. I mean, just use your imagination. You're pumping something wet. Like, come on, like I'm not the only pervert around here. Yeah.
No, you're right. So it's bitchy ho. We're effing you on the flow. We effing you in the bed. Then I'll shoot you in the head. I thought that was interesting. You'll never make me cry. Before that, bitch, you die. Wicked, clown, sadistic, psycholistic. And then I do like Nate the Mac and club ya in the back. I'm not like the other guys. I'm quick to blacken your eye. But what if he's not talking about a black eye, but like seeing black in a magical experience, like seeing darkness? So I thought that's kind of interesting, especially when you're talking about the Scarlet Woman, just because that is the 17, right? It's kind of like the merging of the beast and the woman together. And then you're kind of doing something. You're kind of like activating like the force or the power. So I don't know. There's something that was really interesting to me. And I think you look at the lyrics and you think, okay, it's really crazy, misogynistic or violent, but then I actually don't think it is. I think it's actually just talking about a magical experience. Now, yes, maybe he is directing it at a specific idea, but I think that there's a greater idea in it. Come inside, take off your coat, I'll make you feel at home. TikTok, don't stop. To the beat, TikTok, you don't stop. Then take out my billy club and go upside your dome. So another reference to the skull cap. That's interesting. To the beat, TikTok, you don't stop. To the beat, TikTok, you don't stop. Bitchy ho, you freaky ho. Bitchy, bitchy ho. You effing freaky ho. Bitchy, bitchy ho. Okay. You have a can of mace, and I'll shoot you in the face. Just to reference one of my articles for the Occult Research Institute, mace is an herb of Mars, and the idea of Mars comes up a lot for them, and it's also a prominent color. They love that red kind of accent. So I just thought that's really interesting in terms of like what you're seeing, because he was talking about darkness, and then you're coming up into the red. So that's also interesting because liquid mace is red. So I don't know. I felt like that's something, and you also can't see. So you're kind of disoriented from the things that you usually would assign words to. You can't see them. You can't distinguish them. That makes sense as well, I think, in a magical experience. I'll grab you by the neck and rip that shit out. I thought that was also an interesting lyric, because what is he really talking about? Don't think that I'd hit ya, but I'd punch, stomp, and kick ya. You wouldn't hit a lady. What a bitch. What a bitch. You told me that you love me. I thought that shit was true. But then you asked on my boy's dick until his balls turned blue. Clever lyric.
Wow.
But also it could be, you could say there's also like something there. It's kind of like, prolonging like a bliss state, like when you're in a magical experience and it's like that, you hit that moment where it's like really wonderful. There's this idea in Buddhism that you prolong the bliss state, and it's usually given a sexual metaphor, but it's not actually a sexual thing when you're experiencing it. So I just thought that's kind of interesting. Freaky trick, take your fucking pics, S or F or what. I guess love is the word. You act like you ain't heard. I'm not like other guys. I'm quick to block in your eyes. So just for me, that was a really interesting song. And obviously love is said to sometimes appear at Chesed, but I actually think it's better portioned out at Yesod. I think that makes more sense for me personally. I think that's where the feeling come from. Like if someone said, I am what I feel, for me, that would make sense for Yesod. And love is something you feel, but there's also a transcendent element of love. So that would also make sense, because if you understand Yesod, you know it gives way to Dath, meaning that Yesod is Dath in one way of thinking. So it's just hidden. It's hidden from our sort of perception until we finally realize it. So I think that's interesting. And because that's obviously descending on the tree, but maybe if you're ascending, you're starting to realize, you're starting to change in your perception of things. So I don't know. That's, for me, I felt like that could be a very magical song, not just a crazy, like, you know, like a fighting song.
No, I definitely see, you know, and the thing is too, is like, for me, it's like you find like, for me, there was a lot of like small things. And I think like if you were to spend the time and put it all together, you could like really, I think actually show a lot with a lot of this stuff. I was just like, for me to get all into that, but I do see what you're talking about there. And I like even some of the colors, I hate like to go back to mine, but like you were talking about possibly like in the eyeball, like even when Isham was in 8 Ways to Die, he says something about like, I'm digging your girl out and there's blood on the rug now. But like at one point, I do think he's also referencing the hyaloid canal about like in doing stuff. Like I do think he's making eyeball symbolism besides that. And it's like at that point, like, you know, could he have been talking about that in this? Like,
yeah,
there's red, like in the eye, you will have green, red, and blue cones.
Well, that makes sense, right?
And
because, like,
if you look at them underneath like a electromagnetic microscope, whatever the fancy shit is, even if it's not colored, but sometimes you'll see like certain ones being colored differently to show you the different cones. In my opinion, if you were lay down on the floor and look at your carpet, it would look like the same shit. Like it honestly does look like, or like really short cut blades of grass in your eye. So it's like I was like, when you're talking about blood on the rug now, you're talking about the red cones in the eye. Like, since everything else I think you were talking about the eye already. I don't want to give him too much credit, but sometimes I do think like there is like little things like that they talk about.
I definitely think it's possible, especially with Ishan being a co-writer of that song, just because he seems to be he's very occult oriented. He would know all this shit. He would kind of have some of these conclusions, and blood is an illusion. It's not necessarily like I use it sometimes when I on Twitter, and I'm not talking about blood. I'm talking about the color. I'm talking about like different meanings, like the layered meaning. So I'm not like, I think you have to look at it more conceptually. I know you do this, but I think people who are interested in it, you have to look at it like it's a conceptual work, and there are various layers of meaning, just like with Kabbalah, that can be extracted from it. And I definitely think that the eye is they're how we perceive at least one part of light. So you cannot underestimate or overestimate their importance, really.
Just showing a Ouija Mac here real quick with the 17 on his face. One of the guys that are they like kind of mess with them. I think they're under their label or something like that. All right, so now I'm going to jump over to the Wraith. I wanted to cover this one just real quick. I thought it was interesting. Actually, you know what? I'll just go through this one and then the Unveiling, and then I'll let you go, Jen. Just to keep it going. The Wraith, and even another reason why I even took this down, I mean, again, I don't know all their stuff, and I was like, if I probably like went through every album and did, stuff with numbers, I'd probably find more shit, or even more symbolism just reading all their lyrics. But again, I just wasn't going to do that. This song is 3 minutes and 33 seconds long. There was at least one other song I noticed that did that too, which is kind of Occult, I think, and I do have that on here as well. So I even found that interesting. Was that on purpose? 333. The Wraith. Yeah, because I mean that could even go back to the Book of Lies with Crowley. That's 333.
And that is like a lot of the contemporary occultists are very into that sort of combination of like this. It refers to Mars, I believe. I think that's the planetary like number. I think that's right. Is that right, Nick?
Well, going Kabbalistically, that would be Saturn.
Okay, Saturn. Oh, you're right.
And
the
interesting thing I do see with like also 333 is like if with multiplication or addition, you're also going to get 369 out of all that too.
Mm-hmm.
So, if that means anything. So I found that was interesting, and it's just some of the lyrics I thought was interesting. Is as sure as we're ready today, and death is inevitable. He's waiting there, watching through the eyes of a crow. And death is always at a shitty time. Don't bother trying to run and hide. Take his hand, cross to the other side. He says freeway intersections when the bars close, he loves them. Blow out traffic lights, he hovers above them. And he loves the motherfucker. He loves the motherfucker out of crackheads and heroin rehab centers and caring mothers, always scaring him, sharing them needles. I don't know. I guess they were trying to shit on like. Oh. He encourages raw sex. They got him working steady collection they got him working and steady collecting soul checks. Then again, 9 times out of 10, I wish he'd take me instead of some of these poor children we see. So, that's like another thing, and I think that's what they were getting out of it. And something else that I didn't even notice on the Great Malenko, they don't have like a lot of good things to say about like alcoholics, drug addicts, and people that charge for religious bullshit. That is one thing I did notice about them just from that one album. So I always did find that interesting too. It's like what are they, assholes with some sort of morals? Like that's what I thought when I first came across them.
Well, Violent J really likes the Mars. He talks about it in his own like the solo albums he did. He references Mars multiple times. I think that he likes this idea of Gevura, of strength. I think that that's very important to them, and it is about being severe, but not about being severe to be mean. It's about being severe to portion out mercy. So I think that is important rhetorically, saying those things, even though people can take it as mean. Sometimes people need to hear that because it can be useful to help snap those people outside of their kind of delusion of addiction. I don't know. That's just a thought I had.
No, I get that. And then to finish this off, which I thought this part was rather interesting, he remains nameless, but we call him the Wraith. He is the 6th Joker card of the deck. He's the 6th Joker card of the Dark Carnival Faith. That's it. Now your clock is ticking. Every second counts. And everything you do, that righteous or wrong, it all amounts. And whether you're going to heaven or hell, he doesn't care. He's only here to give you the death touch and send you there. Most people fear him because they don't understand that once he finally touches you with death, eternity can begin. And then they have the Unveiling, and that was kind of like, again, when I was going back to my friend from back in the day, that was the song, I think it might have been the second to last song on that album, where I think they kind of like just came out and said it. And these are the lyrics to it. It's actually like not that long with like the same lyrics. The Carnival of Carnage, the Ringmaster, the Riddle Box, the Great Malenko, the Amazing Jekyll Brothers, and the Wraith. Looks like we're all out of time, brother. Everybody's out of time. Fuck it. We gots to tell them. All secrets will now be told. No more hidden messages. This is it, y'all. Time's up. Everything's going to be out right here. No need for the reverse talking. The truth. What is it that draws you in, the magic that compels you? And like I did take some of the lyrics out. We've been waiting 6 fucking Joker cards to finally tell you. The message and the hints were there, although most never picked up on them. We snuck them in subliminally with that wicked shit around them. We mentioned more and more on every Joker's card. The bottom line, always the same, you ain't have to look hard. All the 6 have risen, and the end of time will consume us all. It ain't got nothing to do with us. It ain't psychopathic records. All we're doing is pointing shit out to you. We're in this together. Who's behind the Dark Carnival, the gatherings, and the hatchet? Who's behind Dark Lotus, the circus, and everybody at it? Who invented juggalos and juggalettes and fucking Fago showers? What about that feeling you get when you're bumping our shit? Who's behind these juggalo powers? This ain't no fucking fan club. It ain't about making a buck. Don't buy our fucking action figures, bitch. I don't give a fuck. It ain't about Violent J or Shaggy, the Butterfly, or 17. When we speak of Shangri-La, what you think we mean? Truth is, we follow God. We have always been behind him. The carnival is God, and may all juggalos find him. And then it says, may the juggalos find him, may the juggalos find him. He's out there, he's out there. We're not sorry if we tricked you. We don't care what happens now. We're not sorry if we tricked you. We swing our hatchets and we're proud. We're not sorry if we tricked you. Painted faces in the crowd. And then they say the carnival will go on. Yeah, he's everywhere. I'm saying he's anywhere. Juggalos, he's out there. And basically just saying on about trying to find God. Oh, and then it says, but I'm not going to fry, even though most never try. I'm not going to let this pass me by. So, like, that song actually was like, holy shit.
It was really deep. It was really deep, honestly. I'm even processing the lyrics now. I mean, you know, whatever they believe in, it obviously works for them. It's clearly working for them. I listened to them on a recent interview. They seemed happy. They seemed very normal. They did talk about loving God. Now, they may not be talking about the Christian God, but it doesn't really matter because they're talking about a higher power. They're not trying to sell you something and be stuck on it. They're not trying to like put you into a klepoth and be like, oh, this is what you should worship. Like they're saying, go higher, aim higher. So I appreciate that. And I think that, you know, I think they telegraph it. I mean, I think you think this too, Nick. I think that they're telegraphing that they're, you know, they know a little shit, and that's fine. And I think it attracts people. I think it attracts people who don't even know, because then they're like, I'm curious about this and I want to know about it. And, you know, so there, I don't think it's bad. I just think that they're doing something and it's a magical operation, but it doesn't have to be for negative purpose.
Yeah, no, I would, you know, again, like, you know, it's kind of weird to even say it. Because, I mean, by looking at them, especially the shit I'm showing right here, you're like, whoa. But, I mean, I don't know. Sometimes, I mean, listen, like, there's somebody I know that, I mean, even the guy Hush Hush, I mean, you know, let's be honest. I mean, I don't think he would deny it, really. Mike, he has coffee. I mean, he at one point was talking to me, I think before they started the coffee, it was either going to be like conspiracies or occult. I think he had even asked me, like, my opinion, not that it made a difference, but I think, like, he was even like, yeah, I think we might go with that because I've been thinking the same thing. I said, not for nothing, I hate to say it, I said, occult shit's going to make your shit sell more than fucking conspiracy-themed coffee.
Mm-hmm.
I said, that's just always an easy, my opinion, it's more captivating and, like, just out of ignorance of what the shit means, people will buy it. I hate to say it. You know, just like thinking, oh, this is what I think it means. Oh, yeah, that's cool. Let me buy that. You know? And so, you know, then they ended up going with it. But, I mean, he doesn't know much about that stuff. I mean, he's asked me before about certain things to use on it. So, I mean, like, you know, sometimes I think just people know that, like, even doing shit like this will get your people's attention. I mean, put it this way. I mean, if you were to, like, for me, I mean, there's things that Wu-Tang says that would,
Well,
I could see,
clearly.
that I could see would get my attention to go Googling and looking into other things. You know, I thought it was funny. I saw Ghostface Killer a few days ago. I had posted some shit. I think it had to do with, like, I mean, I do believe, like, Planned Parenthood does, you know, is here to help exterminate maybe certain types more than others.
I agree.
And I think he was, like, saying, like, making a point how, like, the border doesn't even have, like, you can't even get an abortion when you're sitting at the border, like, but, like, the illegal immigrants, they won't take their kids, but they're real quick to take the kids, something like that. He was going off on something, whatever, and he made kind of like a political post, and people are like, oh, dude, don't fucking start this shit, and, like, somebody made, like, a MAGA comment, but, like, I just saw a lot of people shitting on him, and I'm like, yo, not for nothing, but, like, since day one of listening to Wu-Tang, I've known they've been shitting on the government or governments.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, why is this such, like, a fucking, like, whoa? Like, I don't know. I'm not even the biggest Wu-Tang fan, and, like, I saw that. Maybe you need to go listen to some of this shit again. Actually listen to what they're saying. Read the lyrics. I mean, they talk about shit all the time.
Well, let me just say this, is that two of my good podcasting friends, DJ Poolhouse and Datman, they did an episode on the 5%er movement and kind of like, and Datman is a practicing Muslim, so he kind of brought and interested in the 5%ers, although he didn't go through, I guess it's called like a process or something. But anyways, he talks a lot about it in depth and about supreme mathematics and all of that stuff. And I know you've done multiple episodes on the Nuwabians and different sort of like where they sort of meet and with Jay-Z and all of that. So it's, people should go listen to that show, because then if you sort of understand what Nick's saying and you combine it with that, I think there's something there that they have some of these people that are very successful, and I'm not talking about Jay-Z, but I mean Wu-Tang. I do like Wu-Tang personally, but I think that they use the things to manifest like the life that they want, and that's, you know, so sometimes I think when they make the I know when I talk about politics, sometimes I am using a metaphysical sort of understanding. Not that I like am big into talking about politics, but I think that there is a meaning to having a border. Like there is a Kabbalistic. It has to exist. It's a necessary function. Your skin has to exist. So therefore, ergo, you know, the kingdom has to have a border. It makes sense. So I do think that they have some kind of esoteric insight into the same things. That's my opinion. I don't know if that's true, or maybe that's totally off, but
yeah. No, I mean, even like, I mean, just thinking of like right now, like, you know, it's especially if it's like Ghostface, you know, going back to Wu-Tang, even with Ghostface Killer, you know, in Triumph, he says, "Hey, it's me, Noble Drew Ali." Like, just going back to who the fuck Noble Drew Ali was. I mean, like, you know, when you're telling this guy he shouldn't be like saying these things on Instagram, Noble Drew Ali was like a racist, like occultist that was like kind of like political. You know, I'm just saying, like, you know, that referencing shit like that type of political shit's okay. But this wasn't. I don't know. Whatever.
Topsy-turvy world.
Yeah, it was like when they were pushing like their 5%er type shit, because that was obviously a huge influence on them. in my opinion.
100% a huge
Fucking
influence. Definitely huge. I'll send you that episode and you can check it out because I think
Nice.
they did a great job of explaining the numbers and stuff.
All right. Did you want to go on to something that you had now?
Yeah,
or-
we can totally do that. Or we can do, if you want to do something else, we can do something else.
No. Well, I have like a Dark Lotus song that I was going to go over.
Okay, let's do that. I have
Okay.
Wizard of the Hood. I'm going to do that. I'll do it
Okay.
after.
All right.
And then I have two others. And yeah, that's what I have.
Awesome. Yeah, then we'll probably finish around the same thing. Dark Lotus, they had a song called Alibaba. Alibaba equals 28 and simple. It matches ICP. Mac. And I do think like Mac is Mac might be like in the name of like one of the dudes that makes the beats. For some reason his name is escaping me. I could be wrong. Eden, Man, Jedi, Lamb, and Air. But I did find ICP matching Alibaba interesting.
It is interesting.
This is the Lord of the Gods. And then this is interesting. It's like, and then backwards being said is within the Stonehenge. And like the lyrics even give you like the backwards lyrics. Like they're not even like hiding it. Like when they put out their lyrics, it even shows like what's being said backwards. And if you play it backwards, it does match. So it's not even like they were lying. This is the Lord of the Universe. This is Stonehenge backwards. This is the He who winds fear. And then pyramids is said backwards. This is He right here. And then carnival is said backwards. Right here. And then Egypt and carnival is said backwards. Having the voice to his commandments. And carnival is said backwards. The Lord of all things. And then Kadesh is said backwards. King, ruler, and helper. And then the church is said backwards. Hear me now, make all spirits subject unto me. And then Apocalypse and Kadesh is said backwards. Verse 1, Shaggy Too Dope. Venomous snakes magically charm. All of this appear with the wave of a wand. Pharaohs eternally rest in they tomb. Hexes unleash all out doom to consume. Nomads wander, where do they go? Violent J then says, floating on a magic carpet with a fat sword. It's Joe Bruce of the Lotus Ward, which I think Joe Bruce might be like his name. And then they say Violent J backwards. You could try to rub my lamp, I might float out and spike your ass like Vampiro. I bow to the pyramid, I do confide. The secrets of the carnival are deep inside. Disrespect it, then hocus pocus. I'll split your forehead and plant my lotus. You don't know what this killer's all about. I might sever your head off and fuck your mouth. I actually didn't realize I had these lyrics. Bells and chimes ring 17 times. Faceless souls act out like mimes. Pegasus cry as gargoyles take eyeballs from the heads like skinless grapes. Even kings will fall to their knees and end up only knowing one word, and then backward is please. So I thought that was some pretty deep shit right there.
That is really deep, especially the pyramid stuff. Yeah. I'm like really, it's like kind of like hitting me. I'm kind of like seeing it a little better now, more clear, I guess, because it's so important. This idea of the pyramid and the visualization that happens in Buddhism, like you do these two tetrahedrons meeting each other. So it's like, it's kind of like the ascending and descending triangles, but it's three-dimensional. And so where you specifically place them, so they're not supposed to directly meet, but in between them, a lotus is visualized. And then surrounding the lotus is the mantra. So you visualize the mantra in a specific color, but you visualize the letters of the mantra that you are speaking at the same time. So there's something really interesting about what he's talking about. And even the cutting your head off and effing you in the mouth, I don't even think that that's sexual. I think it's actually referring to something else.
I think like a lot of things, like, you know, yeah. Well, that I would almost kind of like the hangman in a sense, and then you're gonna have sex magic in your eyeballs. I don't know, it's hard to explain. But like, yeah, there's a lot of times like I do think where they're symbolizing death part as like, well, that's gonna happen with, you know, I say this all the time. It's just my opinion. If you're gonna have a real magical it's just my opinion when it comes to magic. I think death can be something to expect. regardless if it's a second or a few. I do think, and they even in like one of their songs, like I think it might have been Cypher 17. I don't think I ever got to that. It is interesting though that they have a song called that. I think at the end of it, they're talking about how juggalos don't die, and they were like saying that over and over again. And it's like you have to like understand, like if people do like look at practicing magic equating death in a sense. I mean, I do see like why people use it over and over again as like symbolism, regardless of how silly it is. I can see how you even saying like not that they don't die, but I mean they've already died and came back. I mean, I know that sounds crazy to say because the only fucking time you ever have that is with Jesus. But like it sometimes I think that's why Kanye goes on his shit.
I agree with you, and I also think an NDE and a magical experience they're not indistinct. They're almost the same thing. Oh, maybe not quite, but very similar. And so I do think that there is a moment of death that happens. Now, is it like conceptual or perceptual death? Sure. Is it actual death? Probably not. But there is there's a moment that is outside of time. So maybe you could say something outside of time is also outside of death.
Yeah. And then real quick, I did find this interesting. I was like, I got to look up Kadesh. Kadesh is a place name that occurs several times in the Hebrew Bible, describing a site or sites located south of or at the southern border of Canaan in the kingdom of Judah in the kingdom of Israel. Kadesh was the chief site of encampment for the Israelites during their wandering in the Zin desert. I find that interesting because, like, when I had said that me and Lisa ended up coming across something that kind of really changed our perception of the Eyeball series. It was the Zonules of Zin in your eye. That once I saw that, it showed me so much more stuff, I think. And I just found that interesting in the Zin desert, as well as the place from which the Israelites' spies were sent to Canaan. The first failed attempt to capture Canaan was made from Kadesh. Moses struck a rock rather than speaking to it as the Lord commanded. That brought forth water at Kadesh. Miriam and Aaron both died and were buried near a place named Kadesh. Moses sent envoys to the king of Edom from Kadesh, asking for permission to let the Israelites use the king's highway passing through his territory, which the Edomite king denied. So there was something with Kadesh as well. Just wanted to add that.
I'll just point out that the story about Moses striking the rock, and that's why he gets called up to the mount, and in some ways he supposedly transfigures into the angel Enoch. Sometimes that's how it's described. Some people have related that story, I'm sure already know this, Nick, but as like a magical story. So they will say that God was never really angry with Moses per se. He was angry that Moses used like a sort of gross sorcery or gross magic to open the rock instead of using the words that God had taught him, like the words of creation. So I do think that that's very interesting. I think Moses, for many people, is kind of the OG magician of the Bible, and he is a magician. Be very clear about that. You cannot like transform your staff into a snake eating cobra if you are not a magician. So I personally think that is very significant, that name.
Yes. I even find that whole situation with, like, I know I've mentioned this before. I don't know if maybe you've ever heard me say it, but like, the whole situation with Moses, like turning the staff into a snake, right? And like if you watch him do that, like you'll be whatever. Remember, people had to watch him do it. It's like, well, there was supposed to be like how many people there? Like, you really want to tell me the motherfucker in the back could see anything? Did he have like projection screens? Was this like televised? They're up on at a concert, and they put the screens up in case you get the shit seats. At least you can see the screen. Like, you kind of need that when you have that many people to witness that. Like, you can't see that far. Are you going to see over what if you're short and you're at the back? Like me. What if I was at the back? I was screwed. I wasn't seeing shit. I had to get on somebody's shoulders. So, yeah, I've always found that situation interesting.
It is interesting, and I'm not saying it was real. I think it can be both things at the same time, like allegorical.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, I think that's a deep, very deep story, for sure. You want to go into one of your things?
Sure, but I want to tackle this idea of Shangri-La. I realize, like, because you said it so many times when reading the lyrics, I should have probably written notes on this, but I can just do it from my head because I am a Buddhist, so it's not that hard. So this idea of Shangri-La is really interesting. I don't know if they're using the theosophical idea, which is slightly different, or the more traditional Tibetan Buddhist idea. But I do think that it is a very interesting place because that is where Guru Rinpoche, who is he's kind of like the focus. He's the Buddha of Tantra. So I'll post him sometimes. He holds a trident, which is interesting. He also holds a vajra, like a little thing that spins in his hand. That is the 5 elements mixed together with sound and perception. So 6 things or 7 things, but sound is really the secret thing because they don't tell you what sound activates it. So that he lives in this copper pyramid. It's called Zangdok Paltry. Anyways, that is Shambhala or Shangri-La. So that is what like when the theosophical people talk about finding Shangri-La or looking for Shambhala, that's what they're talking about. They're looking for this giant copper pyramid that kind of floats in space, and then there's like a moat that surrounds it, and it's filled with lotuses, interestingly enough, who have little dakinis inside of it, like fairies, I guess you could say, and like naked, beautiful women, usually scarlet, but they can actually be all colors, but usually pink or scarlet, and they fly. So he's surrounded by them. That's kind of the idea. So I just wanted to say that about Shangri-La because I think it's interesting and it's very magical. He is like the OG sorcerer of Tantric Buddhism. So I think it has meaning regardless of how they meant it.
Yo, didn't Stone Temple Pilots have an album called that?
Yes, I believe they did, actually.
Yeah, I'm looking that up. I'm like, wait, because I was like, I know I've I remember when I had ever heard like that word associated with them. I was like, oh, I've heard that before. So like have heard of that word before I've ever heard of it from them. Oh, it was like Shangri-La Dida. That was the name of it.
Well, I do think that there is a clear element of this kind of like distillation of Tibetan Buddhism, Tantra in particular, into the Laurel Canyon scene, into popular culture of the 90s, obviously Nirvana.
One of the bands I actually wanted to eventually cover with you, I was even tossing back and forth, either Stone Temple Pilots or Alice in Chains.
I think
eventually down the road, because I do, because I think, Nirvana would interest me too. It's just like, to me, I just like feel like
everybody's done it. I know.
Neither that, or it's like, again, like one of the reasons why I picked Ice. Originally, I was all about Wu-Tang, and I was like, you know what? If I want to go to pick a rap one, I was like, I've kind of thought this about ICP. I was like, I want to pick like something that's just like people be like, what? Like, just like not even, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So like picking, I think like Alice in Chains, people are like, wait, what?
That's a very interesting image. Even I won't get into it, but there's a very interesting kind of anima sola, like the lost soul in purgatory kind of imagery that they use often. So I do think that would be a very interesting.
Like I would love to cover Megadeth because of like I think they're huge into Scarlet Horse symbolism, but I just feel like that would be like it's like a given. Like, all right, most people are probably going to think negative things. Again, I could care less. Dave Mustaine, whoever he is, I'm not trying to stick up for him, but it's just like I feel like Megadeth is almost like a given of like obviously something's there. You know what I'm saying? Regardless if you think it's, one thing or not. I feel like, certain bands is just obvious. Like, Slayer, what would be the point of covering Slayer? You know what I'm saying? It wouldn't be much of a shock, I think, to see that name pop up. So I kind of wanted to do shit like that. So I thought ICP kind of fit for rap, if you even consider them rap.
They were a surprisingly interesting choice and really surprised me how much is actually in their work and how clever it is. And I think you said this even on Twitter, that they're not stupid. And they, even in interviews, they do not come across as stupid. No. They come across as maybe American, like the everyman sort of thing. Like they're not necessarily, I don't know. Like they're not.
I think they grew up in like Detroit and like the hood too.
Yeah, I think they did, and so they, you know,
And they
they're
were
not
even in
necessarily
like a gang prior too.
Yeah, and I know that Violent J's been to, like, I think he did like a quick stint in jail, not
Skid
like
bid,
a long
little
time.
skid bid.
So but they're very smart actually. They're very intellectual. They have and you don't the thing with magic, which I think is really interesting, I think you might think this as well, is that all it takes is a bit of intelligence. It just takes a bit of intelligence to really start to apply yourself. And you don't really need like all the trappings of all the other stuff. And so I think that's what's really interesting about them. They have this kind of wild, chaotic energy that they kind of like obviously did this. Like, even if someone introduced them to some of the concepts or ideas, they still had to take it and run with it. And I think that's impressive that they did and were able to make it a success. So I think that's interesting just on face value.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Did you want to cover? Yeah, you're going to cover a song too, right?
yeah, I'm going to do Yellow Brick Alleyway.
Nice.
So I thought this was really interesting. This is obviously Violent J and the Mike P. I think that's who they call Mac. That's my memory. I believe that's true, but that might be not right.
Oh, Mike Clark. Yes, that's what it was. Yeah, I remember them saying Mikey Clark. Mikey Clark. Sorry, it wasn't Mac. I mean, for some reason, I put Mac down. I don't know why. Because I do think there might be somebody that referred to as Mac. Maybe you are right.
No, there might have been. I do remember that too,
Clark.
but I don't. Yeah, I don't specifically remember. So Yellow Brick Alleyway, the artwork, so people should Google it. It's really interesting. It's a yellow brick highway. He's wearing, interestingly enough, a kind of a little Running Man, like a neck chain, and he's wearing all blue. He's like in a very chesed blue, and the yellow brick goes up onto a purple hill. So this, like I was saying, this symbolism of the yellow and purple seems to come up a lot. It's very, for me, it's very Yesod. It's very Tippereth to Yesod. And interestingly enough, well, not interestingly for Nick, but interestingly for people listening, I think it's worth saying that Yesod really is where we are. In one way of thinking, obviously in the Yetzirah, that's the idea, is that we really are there. So that is what people talk about when they say like the truth. That is sort of the pathway from Malkuth to Yesod is sort of contained by the truth. That is, and the truth can be colored in different ways depending on how you articulate it. So I just think that's
the only way you'll get there, I think, is actually coming upon truth and searching for it. Yeah,
I agree.
I think it's like a
100%.
synonymous thing, kind of. I know what you're getting at with that. Tell you the truth, I think like that might even get into kind of like actual real like Kabbalistic ideas that might actually like fit with like Yesod, believe it or not.
No, I think it makes sense. I do. I saw, I had a Hasidic Kabbalist on who's also a physicist, and it was a really interesting interview. And he really made that case that the truth is really a crystal staircase. And sometimes it's visible and sometimes it's invisible, but it's always there. And we just have to kind of find it and like recognize it. And we can't let our own sort of perceptions and will color it. So I just thought that's such an interesting point, and I think I carried that with me from that show, and it sort of gave me a new kind of insight into Yesod and how important it really is. And people don't really put enough emphasis, I think, on it, but I think it matters a lot, especially for us in like if you think of us in like a 3-world system, and we're on like the lower part of the world, of the third or tertiary world. I think that makes a lot of sense, because it's the sphere that we can sort of see that is closest to God in one way of thinking. That is least accessible to us. Not closest to God per se, but at least it's there's an interaction. So I think that's interesting. So lyrics. Damn fuck, hat the fuck. Let me go get myself together. Look here. I'm a live man, but don't know where the fuck I am. Damn, I don't understand Fantasyland. I'm looking out my kitchen window, but I don't see the sedan on blocks. And damn, it's not the land I got the gotcha rock for 20 spot. I think we out of Michigan, the wind, it must be put me farther. Seeing purple trees and yellow clouds, again, that same color, is talking to each other. Maybe another dimension, even not to mention talking trees with information worth receiving. I got probation. I can't be leaving. I'm thinking only when I'm needing emergency needs. A sack of 17 roaches and an O of Rogello weed. So yeah, you have the 17, you have a 0 or an O, so it could obviously go either way. But I do think that is interesting, and that's again very Kabbalistic. 17 is the star card. I just something to me, and roaches again. That does remind me of that thing that you would always say is that stars backwards is rats, and roaches and rats. Yeah, there's a similarity.
Oh yeah, like I can see what you're saying. You're like, you drop a nuke and you'll, but definitely have like roaches and maybe a few rats left over. You know what I'm saying? Like they'll still be around, and maybe a few kids actually with their immune system as babies, they might be able to withstand a nuclear blast. But definitely roaches and rats, I think.
Well, I agree, and I do think there's something interesting, and I think this is talking about his magical sort of experience of like he's in like his, I guess, higher dream worlds. That's sort of how I like understood it when I read it, but I'll read the rest and you can tell me what you think. Mm-hmm. I'm standing on the porch. I'm still denying this shit. I notice all these tiny little people hiding and shit. It's hundreds of them staring at me, scared to they spots. I'm tripping out because everything they got to be colorful with polka dots. They probably don't like my raggedy crack house on they land. I understand, but when I walked out and said, "What's up?" a party began. The witch is dead. They killed that bitch. The witch is dead. She is dead. The witch is dead. Woohoo, the witch is dead. And then he talks about we don't know who you are and we don't really care, but your carnival clown ass is welcome here because you and that damn near abandoned house landed right on top of the wicked witch of the south, and we hated that wicked bitch so much, said we hated that slutty whore, and you crushed and killed that wicked bitch. We'll be grateful forevermore. So my house landed right up on some neighborhood trick, huh? That's the shit, huh? Look, there go her feet. Sick, huh? Dumb bitch. I started playing it off. I seen her in the window, so I was running around moving shit and aiming it, Anyway, how the fuck am I getting home? Don't worry, see the yellow alleyway and you'll get home in a hurry. It leads to the wizard, the player. He's the pimpest of all. He'll get you any fucking thing you need. In that case, I'm dancing with y'all.
Damn.
So I felt like that was pretty... I thought that was pretty magic. And then to talk about the wizard at the end and even killing the witch, because you could think of that as like the sacrifice of the whore in one way of thinking. And I think that would make sense for there, because they definitely prefer like the 8. They definitely like have like a little bit of beast team symbolism. And I'm not saying that in a judgment. That just seems to be something they like. So I think that's really interesting. And obviously the colors. But I did think that one thing that he did say was it was looking out like a dream, and so they're not quite on Earth. So again, there's this idea that maybe they're saying what Kabbalah also says is that we're really on Yesod. We're not, like, Malkuth is who we are, but Yesod is where we live. So I do think that there is something in there that speaks to that. I'm not sure what Nick thinks, but I'll let him go. I'll let him comment.
The one thing, unfortunately, it's just the one thing that popped out of my head and ended up sucking up my thoughts. When they talked about her feet, I had, even when I was at the, I've noticed it a lot on tarot. And when I, the lady, the tour guide that we had when I went to the Vatican, I actually thought was pretty decent because, like, one, she went into like, before we even got in there, like, she wanted to go over a few things, I guess, like, touch upon it and give her opinions on some things. And, like, she mentioned in the Sistine Chapel, she went into the whole thing about the brain being on the ceiling and, like, and then, like, it's kind of, like, accepted that at one point, when they're touching, that's actually just both sides of the brain. That's, like, accepted even by, like, the church now. That's what was painted. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And, like, even certain times, like, when we're walking around, like, if she was trying to show a god, she would give you, like, the associations of what they were in other religions or pantheons. And I was just like, I just wondered, like, is that, like, normal, or was, like, this lady just into the stuff and knew that? But I thought she was actually, like, kind of interesting. So I did go to ask her a question, but I really didn't. She kind of answered it, but didn't really. Kind of just spun me around, I think, to make me think she said something. Something I had noticed there with a lot of the art and the architecture, even the same thing with like the tarot cards, you will see feet sticking out a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And like sometimes one, sometimes the other one, you know, on the men and the women. And I saw that a lot there. And I had asked, I was like, you know, I asked her in her opinion, you know, with the art. I said, because I've seen that plenty of times on tarot and other occult stuff. I said, I see it done with the statues here too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, do you think there's, you know, something, a correlation? What's your opinion on, you think there's something there? I mean, she kind of was like, you know, kind of, I mean, in some ways, like I do question if it has to do with like eyeball stuff. Not even gonna get into that, but she said that like it's, you know, something with like the captivating. It's like you have to captivate like the masses somehow. So even if you have to show a little flesh, but like I don't know, but like you know, I guess if it goes to the eyeball, I mean you need whatever. You're gonna need that to be captivating anyway. You're gonna need to see with your eyes, but I mean, I don't know. For some reason, I got stuck on that when you talked about the feet. As silly as that is, it took me through like wondering, like, what's it? Because I have wondered that, like in occult symbolism, seeing feet exposed at times that I've just wondered, like, why? Because I really do think it's there for a purpose. You know, one will even be pointing one way, and the other one will be exposed, pointed to the side.
So in Tantra, this actually has really significant meaning that it's hard to discuss properly because it is kind of secret, but I'll just say, like, okay, so today I posted some goddess images, and you can see one of them has their left foot sticking out, and then on another image they have their right foot sticking out. So both of those mean different things. It represents the sort of timing, the lunar phases, that has a lot to do with it, but also I think refers to what side of the tree they're on, and I think it also refers to where they manifest and how they manifest, and in relation to what's called the Sri Yantra, so that kind of like pyramidal cube that has like it's like stars. It has 64 little negative spaces in it. So I do think I think it refers to that. I think it refers to the letters on the cube. I think it refers to astrological timing, and I also think it refers to if they're left and right-handed. And I will also say for Tara, this is really interesting, is that white Tara is never depicted with her feet out. She's always just in lotus position, so you cannot see her feet. But with green Tara, she always is sticking out her left leg, which means that she is accessible. She is able to be accessible to humanity. So if you want to place her at Chesed, which is where I placed her in our series, it would make sense because that would be the highest sphere that we can sort of grasp at, or we can sort of reach for. So it's like instant mercy. That's her idea, right? So I do think that it does have layers of meaning, and I think that it's really important. And I don't really have a full understanding of the feet, other than they are our lowest body part that touches the physical ground that we walk on. So there is kind of an energetic, a reciprocal exchange that happens. And I know, Robbie, on your series that you guys did with Isis and Osiris, but also the Temple of Solomon stuff, he talks a lot about feet. And when he came on my show, he also we had a little bit of a discussion of the feet worship that happens in Nepal with the Kumari, who's the prepubescent girl, and she is supposed to be able to take on sort of the dakinis, but she doesn't really know it. It just kind of happens, and then the people around her sort of recognize it. So they worship her feet 4 times a year. So it's a puja, and they draw like sigils and different things, and then they offer butter lamps and milk to her feet. So I think that there is something really esoterically significant. I don't know quite how to put it in context, but I do agree with you.
Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Did you have anything else you wanted to add, or?
No, I thought that was,
Okay.
I thought that song is very much about him being a wizard. I just felt like that is a good one, and I like the colors that he was using. So for me, because they've obviously been coming up for me a lot lately, so maybe that's why I liked it.
This one I'm gonna read, and then I have like a few like just interesting matches with some of their albums and like some other things, and then I think I'll be pretty much good on that. And I think, what do you have, like miracles left?
Yeah, we'll do miracles up. I think that's a great way to end it.
Black Rain is 3 minutes and 33 seconds again. And that is Dark Lotus. I can see the earth starting to shift inside out. No trace of the moon since the face burnt out. Watch the rain fall down, hard and heavy, dark, black, light dirt, but it would burn severely. You could call it the body of the lotus, hand of the magical super unnatural, keeping you focused. If the rain didn't get you, then you're here for a reason, to spread the word to the world that the pod is in season. You can hear the thunderclap, the full moon gleaming, like the eyes of a cat, the dark lotus is back, bitch. And you can feel the ground pulsating, and the haters starting hating. But it's all been anticipated, and we've been waiting till the timing is right. A new age, a new time, now that the planets are aligned. Imagine a lotus sign. Imagine a broken minds just waiting to be fixed. We the unstoppable force, so you hate us, of course. Armed with the fury and the family is a powerful source. Wicked red clouds filled with black rain sewed up until they became too heavy and burst, and I show up. I thought that was like kind of interesting shit to cover. A little weird. I wasn't gonna try to really break any of that down. I just thought it was a little interesting for me. I wouldn't say it's like occult, but it is a little bit. And again, I found it interesting just with the 333. Joker cards. And that I'm not sure if I think all of these might be Joker cards, or some of them might be other albums too. Carnival of Carnage did equal Fovea Centralis in Simple, which is part of your eye. So I added that. The Ringmaster equals Dark Lotus in Hebrew. The Riddle Box equals Endothelium in Simple, which is a part of your eye. Great Malenko equals Medial Rectus in Simple, which is a part of your eye. The Amazing Jekyll Brothers equals Aleister Crowley in Hebrew. Wraith equals Ganglion, which is a part of your eye. And Honeybee in Simple. Shangri-La equals the Beehive, Aleister. Therion, which is another name Aleister Crowley went by, and Right Hand in Simple. The Wraith, you also get Hell's Pit, and that does Hell's Pit matches Shriner in Hebrew, and Hell's Pit equals Trabacula, 8th Degree, Man of Earth, and Crowley in Simple. And The Tempest, that's an album by them. I did notice that is a play by William Shakespeare. And Tempest does equal Nox in Hebrew, which is an Aleister Crowley magical formula. NOX. So that is some weird just things I found with playing around with some of the names. And, Jen, we lost them. Oh, there we go. And another thing I did want to add. Shaggy. Something with him equals Retina, Clown, and Killer. I did find that interesting. I know it's not Shaggy too dope, but Shaggy itself does equal Clown and Killer. And I feel like, whatever, he plays a clown and they do talk about killing a lot.
They do talk about killing a lot. It is sometimes hard to read their lyrics.
Sorry about that. I didn't even realize how far, how long you might have been gone. I had the notes.
No, don't worry.
I was like, you know what? It sounds really quiet.
I'm sorry. I know I talked.
It's all right. No. It's like normally, everybody always has some sort of hiss or hum. You know what I'm saying? So when somebody drops off, you'll notice something disappear. So I was like, wait, I don't think he's here. All right, so you're back. Did you catch any of the stuff I said?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I heard most of it. I was only gone for a minute.
All right. Awesome.
I mean, I don't really have anything to add other
That's
than
fine.
There is a contemporary occult book called Liber 333, which is sort of chaos magic plus, I guess, Kenneth Grant sort of Typhonian style, chaos gods, abyssal gods kind of thing. So it is very Left Hand Path, a little LARPerish, but I do think it's interesting because it does touch on these same kind of ideas. I mean, you're right that a lot of the Left Hand Path books, which I've read, they're very conceptual. They're not like, you're not supposed to take it and be super transgressive. It's really about theurgy. It's really about pushing you through your own darkness to something higher, something better. So I do think that it's kind of cheekily left-hand path, but not necessarily, it's not evil per se. It's just, it is what it is. So I think that's interesting.
That's
that
interesting. There was somebody that I was trying to get on my show that listens to the show, and they have like their own outlets, like they're into their own thing too. I think they got blogs and stuff. You know, I had no idea, and they happened to hit me up, and they had like kind of like worked with the clip off. You know, most people would be like, oh, you know, and I was like, you know, oh, that's kind of like interesting. I was like, you know, how was your experience with that? And like he even said that like he's like wrote about it on like certain places, and he says, you know, a lot of it for his experience was like what you said, a lot more of actually theurgy and like trying to actually clean your own soul up.
I think that's really the point.
I was surprised to hear someone say that. And I was like, oh, would you ever like maybe be interested in coming on? And they're like, no. I was like, fuck.
Well, I'll just say that I've never worked that tree, but I will say that Tantra is very similar. It combines the concepts of the lower and upper tree and sort of into one thing, because it's supposedly, again, very much like the Dark Carnival. God is sort of the emanating consciousness of the carnal ground. So there is something very similar to that. Now, people do get very caught up with the Qliphoth and with worshiping the dark forces. That is really not what it's supposed to do. That's not even what it's supposed to be. But people love the aesthetic of things, and I get that. But I think that if you misuse those things, they can take you to really low places. But if you use them for like a higher purpose, it can really be powerful, but you have to really be in control of yourself. I think that's been my experience anyway, is the more I'm in control of who I am and just like my own life, I feel that it's easier to do those kinds of harder works.
I would agree. All right. So I guess if you want, you can go on to miracles, and then we can wrap it up after that.
Okay, sounds great. We got a theory. You see, Mike, we got a theory about magic and miracles. That's right. That's right. If magic is all we've ever known, then it's easy to miss what really goes on. Occultism. I've seen miracles in every way. I see miracles every day. Oceans spanning beyond my sight, and 1,000,000 stars way above them at night. Okay, this is a clear reference to Crossing the Abyss, but also to the star ocean, the supernal ocean, where Binah and Chokmah sort of interact. So that to me is very obvious. We don't have to be high to look in the sky and know that's a miracle opened wide. Look at the mountain, the tree, the 7 seas, and everything chilling underwater, please. That's also very interesting, because we are supposedly on an ocean. Like, we sit on an ocean. That is the more kind of Kabbalistic idea. Hot lava, snow, rain and fog, long neck giraffes, and pet cats and dogs. And I've seen 85,000 people all in one room together as equals. 85 is 13. So obviously there's something interesting there. Pure magic is the birth of my kids. I've seen shit that'll shock your eyelids. The sun and the moon and even Mars, the Milky Way and fucking shooting stars. UFOs, a river flows. Plant a little seed and nature grows. Niagara Falls and the pyramids. Now, I did have a question about this, because Niagara Falls, for me, I interpret it as more being about the sound, not necessarily the place, but that kind of rushing sound that sometimes happens. I thought that seemed like that fit for me. I don't know, but what
like
what
white
do you
noise? Yeah. Tell you the truth, I never even thought of that. That's actually it's a different way I wouldn't look at that. Yeah, because like, just besides the fact of like, I guess kind of like I mean, you could even say like maybe the star card, because of how there's like, you know, pouring of water. Maybe like a waterfall, like,
right.
Just because like, like I never thought of like the fact of like the sound that comes from that. Yeah, that very much could be for that, not just the imagery, but like the actual sound that comes from those.
But that also makes sense,
because like running
right?
water is very much of like white, kind of like, it has like a certain sound to it that's almost like very mesmerizing, or kind of almost close to like what would be in the Gateway tapes. That helps you kind of like start to like hemi sync and shit.
I agree with that, but I think the star card also makes sense because I think that, I mean, that's sort of what's happening in the idea. You're like the freshwater ocean is being portioned into this other ocean that we float on, or the blood ocean, or whatever it is. Like, there's different ways to describe it, but I do think that there's something interesting about that. So I think the water element makes a lot of sense. I think the sound, because light and sound are so combined or the same depending on your perspective, I think that's really important. So, but I think what you said, I agree with. I mean, I do think that because you know the tarot so much better than me, I think that it's important to refer to it. And I didn't even think of that, but I think you're totally right.
Even like the sound of water to me would almost be very much like the waterfall. Like, there is a watery side to Saturn and Binah. And like, to me, like that type of sound from the way, like the crashing down from the waterfall would be very much more of Saturn, because it's just like, shh, there's no form to it. It's just a continuous sound. There's not going to be any form until your head chest head and the blueprint gets made up. So I mean, not to get too crazy out there with sound and water now, but I could see that for sure.
I agree with that. I think that makes a lot of sense, actually. Because that is it. What, like when we did our Tantra series, like Kali is 1, Tara is 2, Kali's at Binah, Tara's at Chesed. So that would make a lot of sense. And Tara is the mother of the Milk Ocean, which he just referenced earlier in the verse. So for me, there is something that is happening that would make sense. And Mars obviously is in charge of potential energy, because it is the fire kind of that of transmutation, of change. So I can see it. I don't know. You're kind of blowing my mind a little bit, Nick, but I agree with you. It's kind of like I'm thinking about it from this perspective, but for the first time, but I think you're right. Everything you believed in as kids, fucking rainbows after it rains, that's enough miracles here to blow your brains. So that's really interesting. Obviously, rainbows, really important. You could say that that's Chokmah, but you could also say that that's Kether, and you could also say it's above Kether, because there's a sort of rainbow prismatic light associated with all of those things. Or you could say it's also Venus, because that is
especially
right?
Kabbalistically, like the rainbow shoots out of 7 out of Venus or Netzach over to Hod.
Exactly. And he's even saying it's like
I think it's like the Rainbow Bridge, crossing that and going up. Going up, kind of like between, I guess, like Yesod and Tiferet, maybe. I guess, because then you'd be crossing that path. Which I think is, interesting enough, too. I think that's path 27, which I've always found that interesting with the 27 Club. Because it's like, in my opinion, when you hit Yesod, like, you're ready to bounce off and, like, really go farther. You know what I'm saying?
Well, there's something interesting about that number you just brought up, because Shaggy Two Dope, his like birth date numerology is actually 27. Like, if you combine his birthday year with his month, it's 27. Obviously, reduce that to 9. But I do think, I think it's meaningful. I think it's always meaningful. But anyways, okay, sorry, I'll keep going. I didn't mean to.
Sorry, no, it's all right.
I didn't mean to get
No,
off.
I was like trying to answer the chat too. So that's one thing that sucks when you don't have like more than 2 people on. If I start fucking with the chat, unfortunately, I could like kind of screw up the show. So my bad.
No, that's okay. I fed a fish to a pelican at Frisco Bay. I do think it's interesting because birds can be associated with all the spheres, like specific types of birds. Crowley does talk about it a little bit in Lever 777, but I don't always love those correspondences. It's not because I don't think the correspondences are good. I think sometimes it's unclear because the lists are so long. I'm more simple, I guess, and I like what I like. So, but I'll say that. But I do like that would make sense. And then like with what you said, the Rainbow Bridge, and even in the video, they are on this kind of conceptual Golden Gate Bridge, but below them is not water. Below them is totally fog. and the pelican is just kind of standing there. It's very cool but weird, and I do think that there is something there. And the pelican is a little bit black as well, so it's like black and white with the yellow beak. I do think that that is very significant as well.
Yo, you know what's just something that I think I might have mentioned. I don't know if it was on when we covered Elon Musk. Unfortunately, that was supposed to be like a multi-part series. That just like we got started and then just, whatever. But I'm pretty sure we have mentioned it before. Something I found interesting with him, whenever they like show like, you know, like photographs or pictures and announcing like some sort of like launch. I mean, I know like actually up until like probably the last 6 months I had noticed previously before that, because like I do think like he has been actually launching like quite oftenly. I think the last year or two, more than normal. I could be wrong. But you were getting a lot of photos that always had a fucking pelican in it. Like, I think Lisa and Teresa even noticed it. And I was just like, you know, could that just be, you know, I guess, like, they're probably, you know, normal to be around there because, like, it is surrounded by water. You know, like when I was in Venice. One thing I did notice even in Italy, a lot of birds around were, like, religious shit. But, like, when I was in Venice, there was tons of birds around, like, these two churches I was trying to go to, and I wanted to send my drone around them, and I was worried about these fucking gigantic birds. And I was like, oh, well, you know, Venice, it's on the water, so it should be expected, you know, I understand that, but, like, even when I got into Rome, same situation. So, like, I even was like, yo, what's up with that? Like, why particularly, like, do you have birds, like, just circling these religious buildings? It's just very weird. That was just my experience. And now I forgot where I was going with that.
No, I actually think that's really profound in a way because it's
yeah, I got
something
totally
that
bent
Grub-
up with the fucking birds.
No, but I think that it's profound with what Grubb had talked to me about, which was that all the buildings are built on ley lines, and there is like not every single church, but a lot of the significant ones.
And Elon, sorry.
And they see it, right? Like they can feel it or they interpret it in some way. So they can sort of see the vortexes of energy of convergence. So they're of course attracted to that because birds have a strong electromagnetic sense.
You know, I'm sure. I mean, I doubt this is maybe the case, but it is interesting to think of that. Like, you know, I do understand that. Like, maybe they do want to put these things on islands in a sense, because if they blow up, like, you know, it's kind of far away. You have to worry about it. But I mean, again, like what I think I was getting back to was like, you know, Venice. I expected it because it was surrounded by water. You're going to get a lot of birds with, you know, beaches and the coastline and stuff, especially bigger ones like that. But like if you know, not thinking about them sensing certain energy, I mean, I guess that could be helpful maybe if you actually like had kind of like how Skinwalker Ranch supposedly was like using certain animals to see, like, you know, to if they went acting crazy, they would assume something might be going on the ranch. Maybe the same thing with birds. You know, if the energy's going a certain way, maybe you'll notice them fly differently when things start kicking off. I don't know. But we did notice a lot of pelicans. You know, a lot of times there was like always like a pelican in the shot whenever they were talking about the launch and showing a picture.
Well, I personally think that Elon is a devotee or a follower of Mars. That's kind of my personal.
I mean, look at that one thing he put up like that. I mean, that picture he was using for a while.
And I do think everything that he chooses is very magical. I don't think there's anything that he would post that isn't magical. I mean, you can look at his numbers. It's always like 11, 22, 33. It's never natural numbers. It's never just, it's always like gamed in a magical way. So I just think that it's very clear that I don't think the pelican is a mistake. I think that it's in it for a reason. I don't particularly, it does carry water. So in some ways, it is kind of interesting that the beak can hold so much water, can be sort of a vessel or container for water. That also reminds me of the star card in a way too. So
that's interesting. You know, that is interesting. That's almost like kind of like cuppish too.
Exactly. Exactly. So, and yeah, and they sometimes even they have this little fish that can live in pelicans. Maybe I'm going way too, you know, National Geographic, but I do think that there is something interesting that they have that, and they're big. And like you said, so they're not it's not insignificant is what I'm trying to say. I think it actually has meaning, and it really, I mean, they put it in. It's like a huge pelican, and it's sitting there, and then they're wrapping around it, wearing like their face masks and wearing white shirts. So, I think that they used it for a reason. If I'm like, it's not really a stretch to, I think, say that.
Okay, so about birds and mouths and water and shit.
Well, exactly, and
we're thinking about like Toth and like whatever, an ibis and water. That's interesting.
Well, the ibis thing, that's what I thought at first, because I thought it was a crane. So I don't even think they used like a conventional pelican, is what I'm saying, or a seagull or whatever. Yeah, pelican. I think they actually used like more of a specific one. I don't know anything about birds, so it's kind of lost on me.
It's just like kind of just. It's just weird, like it's just out there. It's obviously I've been puffing too much. But like with birds, like some birds, like you're receiving seagulls, and like some other ones, the way like they kind of like dip their head into the water and like pick it up, right, like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's just like some birds like that. Like I was trying to think of like the ibis, if it does that. That's very much. I think it does. That's very much like I was thinking of something kind of like, if you once you get up to Saturn, you have a guy with a bucket tossing water out, and I was just thinking it's funny how like down at the bottom you have like birds that match down there that would be picking it up into their mouth and holding it, and by the time you make it to the top pillar, you're shooting the water back out, which they could, I guess, pour it back out of their mouth. I don't know, some weird shit, but that was a thought going through my head. That was a thought going through my head.
No, that makes sense too, because of the figure 8, right? So it all makes sense. I mean, it's the exchange of water, and like you do have these various transformations of water through fire.
I mean, that's even what the star card's kind of doing. It's picking it up on one side and then pouring it back out on the other. So I mean, I have all this.
Exactly. So I think it matters, and so I'll read the rest of the lyrics, but I think that it'll make more sense like as the song even goes on. So where did I end? Okay, pelican. Music is magic, pure and clean. You can feel it, hear it, but it can't be seen. Can't be seen. Are you a believer in miracles? Music is all magic. You can't even hold it, just like water. Do you notice and recognize miracles? It's just in the air. Pure motherfucking magic, right? The shit'll blow your motherfucking mind. I know they love that line, but I do think it actually is really important. I think it is referencing some kind of like ego death, or even like the spatial death, like Nick and I spoke about before. I think there's something in that. And music is a lot like love. It's all a feeling, and it fits the room from the floor to the ceiling. And this is really interesting because they use a cap domed building. It's kind of like a 3D weird rendering, and so they're inside the building when they're saying that lyric, and it does kind of look like a skull cap. I will just say that, and I felt like that when I watched the video, and then like thinking about it now and hearing the lyric, I think that's what the reference is to. I see miracles all around me. Stop and look around. It's all astounding. Water, fire, air, and dirt. Fucking madness. How do they work? And I don't want to talk to a scientist. Y'all motherfuckers lying and getting me pissed. Solar eclipse and vicious weather. 15,000 juggalos together. So that's also interesting. 15 is the left hand of Moses in Kabbalah. So if you assign it to a verse, I forget which one it is. It's Isaiah something. That's really interesting. The solar eclipse, that can also happen in your eye during a magical experience, going to like having sort of like a moment of blinding darkness from the light, and then a different light appearing, a whiter light. So I think that's really interesting. I think, Nick, maybe you think that's interesting too. And I love my mom for giving me this time on this planet, taking nothing for granted. I seen a caterpillar turn into a butterfly. Miracles ain't holding to lie. Shaggy's little boys look just like Shaggy, and my little boy looks just like Daddy. Miracles each and everywhere you look, and nobody has to stay put where they put. The world is yours for you to explore. There's nothing but miracles beyond your doors. The dark carnival is your invitation to witness that without explanation. take a look at this fine creation and enjoy it better with appreciation. So obviously this was like a total Malkuth kind of like reference of the bridegroom passing through the threshold, seeing the world for the first time, not knowing necessarily how to describe the things that are in it, but she has maybe conceptual words to use, but she doesn't understand them per se. So I think that's really interesting, very tantric also. Crow's ghosts, the Midnight Coast. Crows always show up, and crows always show up in a magical experience. So I think that that's kind of interesting, at least the sound, or there's a conceptual idea with crows. And obviously, right? And they also live on the carnal ground. They're one of the 3 birds of the carnal ground. So I think that's really interesting. The wonders of the world, mysteries the most, just open your mind, and it ain't no way to ignore the miracles of every day, and that's real, and that's real. Are you a believer in miracles? Magic everywhere in this bitch. Or do you notice and recognize the miracles? It's all around you and you don't even know it. She crazy. Do you notice and recognize the miracles? So many miracles, the magic miracles. And so it kind of repeats on that. And then he repeats that 6 times, which is interesting. And well, we're here. Fuck you. We came all this way to Nevada. Come on. What's the show and where's our money? They brought me here all the way from England. Where's my bloody 100,000 pounds? Where's the fucking show gonna start already? What I want to know is where in the hell is my goddamn 100,000 pounds? And where can I get some beer in this motherfucker? I thought I thought this was a carnival. Boo. Where all my sexy kids at? What the fuck? Don't tell me I bought all the candy for nothing. I didn't come all this way to stand around here with all these goddamn lap poles. Let's go. Stop the shit so we can get paid. I came a long way to see the shit. So I don't know. I mean, there's an 11, obviously, because he says 100,000 pounds, and then in the next line, I guess it's 3 lines down. Interesting. He says it again, so that's an 11 because zeros don't really matter that much. I mean, you can just
and he mentions light pole too at the end, right? You said.
Yes.
That's interesting.
And I mean, everything. There was just so much symbolism. I mean, I don't know about the Nevada thing, but maybe you do.
No, Nevada. The only thing that, like, kind of comes up to mind with me would be, believe it or not, the Shriners in Quetzalcoatl. Like, I know they were pretty, but that was like a long time ago. Just because, they look like a clown. I mean, I guess.
Well,
but I mean, that's just like, that's the only thing that really, whenever it comes to Nevada and like Arizona, I always remember that because I remember that they were big in those 2 states. And I found that interesting.
Well, no, I think it's interesting that you say that because both of them, Violent J and Shaggy 2 Dope, had multiple dreams about clowns, supposedly, or at least they narrated that story. Now, whether that's a magician's story that they sort of contain within the framework of a dream or it's a dream, I don't think it really matters that much. But I do think it is interesting that they had multiple dreams of clowns. Their whole concept of the Dark Carnival was around these prophetic dreams. The characters, the wraiths, all the different clowns that appeared that were the true bad guys of the carnival, they all came from dreams. And so I do think there's something really like metaphysical about that. And it does kind of match my own experience. Like, I don't have prophetic dreams, but I've had dream experiences where I can definitely say that I've seen very interesting things that aren't easily explainable. So I don't know. I feel like that is, but it can also be a magician's code too. So I'm just going to say that. But I also think that the line about coming from England to get my money, I don't know, maybe there is a Crowley, like a cheeky little Crowley reference there. I mean, they did have the crow symbolism, so you never know.
Oh, real quick, just to mention before you stop, or before you finish, it just reminded me now when you said something maybe ciphered or whatever. Isham, in that 8 Ways to Die, I was going to get into that, but it would have taken too long. He is the one in that song that does say, and I have mentioned it, He says Michael Myers Psycho Ciphers. And there was a Michael Meyer who was an alchemist who did, was known for ciphers too. So I thought that
did
was
catch
weird.
that series that you did with Lisa, and it was really excellent, and everybody should go listen to that.
So, I just thought that, sometimes I do wonder about ciphers with rappers.
I mean, Violent J loves
Think how many
the
times you hear
double S.
rappers even say ciphers. I mean, that's another thing. I've heard that out of so many rappers.
Oh yeah, like there's like several Wu-Tang songs with that
Yeah,
word.
Nas, I think Wu-Tang, a lot of people.
100%. Well, this is the thing: is it's easy to code your language. I do it all the time on Twitter. I mean, splendor, victory, beauty, fire, water, mercy, strength. That's all. That's just Kabbalah, and you can just you just arrange it in a specific way, and then that's synthesis. So it's very easy to do it with language. Everybody can do it. I mean, everybody can read it too. You just have to kind of like understand the core concepts and what the person's trying to say. Sorry, I didn't mean to go on about that.
No, that's all right.
I think that's interesting. I do think that like rap is a really great medium because it doesn't necessarily have to be linear. It doesn't even have to be narrative. It can kind of switch in and switch out perspectives. So it's easy to sort of put those things in there and sort of craft the lyrics around sort of these occulted ideas. And it's easy to contain the ideas in rap, whether like in the other kinds of music, like pop music, it's much harder to contain the ideas because it has to be cohesive and coherent and catchy for like a younger audience.
It's catchier for a younger audience. I like that. That's true.
Well, I think they fuck with the music a lot more. I think like the pop music, it's a lot about the post-production. It's a lot like that's where the magic really is. I think that there's something interesting about rap because it is like it's more spoken. So I think that they don't need to do all the tricks because they can just be a magician and say what they want to say. Whereas pop music needs to have this layer that you're like obsessed with it, you're consuming it. Like there's all these things, but the singers are replaceable. But it's really the music, it's the frequency, it's all the other stuff that is not performed.
That is true. That's why I do question that concept with talking about frequency. Was it Travis something? I always screw this dude's name up. Like those people, it was like 8 people. I think it might have been 8. I could be wrong. People like
Astro World.
Yeah. Sometimes I just wonder, did that have anything to do with the music they were playing?
Well, 100%. That's an old school Jamaican technique, is to modulate the frequency on those kind of synth boards. And they even talked about it sometimes. They would do, like when reggae and dancehall was becoming popular in like the late 80s, they would bring around these sort of portable like soundboards, and they would have these like outdoor battles. So they would set up their speakers facing each other, and they would modulate it to the frequency. And they have like all the DeLawrence books were sold in Jamaica, so they have all the grimoires. They call it wisdom science, and I mean, it's all there. And they would say that they're doing like duppy battles and invoking spirits, and yeah, they would definitely modulate the sound. So I think that that's a very old idea, but it obviously we have modern technology, so it's easier now.
Not to, and then we'll get back to you, but not to like jump back to Wu-Tang, but I have seen, this wasn't my idea. I saw somebody, I think it might have been Slick Dissident, who said something, and I was like, he might be onto something with that. I think with like ODB, sometimes I question him and Wu-Tang, like, I don't know if he was really as dumb as like people thought. And like what the person was getting at, I was like, even what he was doing with the noises he made. So like, how many different like range of shit he's covering to get your attention when he does those fucking, when he talks silly. It makes like the silly noises. Yeah, for all you know, he actually knew what he was doing with sound.
100%. I mean, he could have been doing little syllables. Like syllables have meaning. They just don't necessarily have like first cognition, like you're first hearing it, so you immediately understand what it means. But if you know what it means, you know what it means. So I definitely think, Wu-Tang is probably the most occult, I think. Like openly, like they are just like, we're fucking wizards, we're doing it.
Was there anything else you wanted to add?
No, that was all I had, but
Awesome. That was awesome.
I
Thank
thought
you.
that was a good one to end on. And everybody watch the video because they have a big stupa in the video, like a 9-layered tower. So this is also a very Buddhist idea. It's how your soul gets kind of projected outward or upward. So that was a big motif. Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
I don't know if they mentioned it in the song. Maybe you did say it. I don't remember. But I remember seeing him in an interview too talk about miracles. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't think I ever actually listened to it. I've looked through the lyrics, and I can't remember. But like, I think in an interview, like he was like talking about like, you know, what inspired him to write that song. And he was like, you know, I just found it interesting how like he picked out. He's like, you know, magnets work. I don't know how the hell magnets work though. He's like, but that's like, you know, going on about like that being like magic and God. And I was like, it's kind of funny how I always do use magnetism as an example with magic. You know, a part
Well, I
of
think
it.
it's a principle. It's one of the first principles of magic. I think it's a really important principle, and it is something that is invisible, and it is something that is like you can demonstrate to someone who doesn't have a clear idea of what magic is. They think it's like spell casting in a cave with candles, but you can just show them magic, not magic, but magnets, and say this is magic, and it is kind of a magic. So, you know, I think it's like another one of those things that are multiple layers of meaning, and I think ICP was a great choice, Nick. I think that it really was surprising, but in the best way.
Oh,
And
it even
Miracles
pushed
is a cool
myself
video.
because I was like, you know, I don't know why I picked the topic. I don't know. Not that it was hard. It just felt like it was hard to present. You know what I'm saying? And like there was even times like, well, I'll be totally honest with you. Going into it, I guess one of the things that I don't want people to, like, again, I mean, I don't know these people. They didn't pay me anything. And I'm really not, again, I'm not sticking up for them and I'm not promoting them. But I will even say there was I thought one of the reasons why I could look at them, I really wouldn't be too biased because I really didn't give a shit about their music. I find them as entertainers funnier. I'll put it that way. Like, I actually think it's like some of their retarded shit on Instagram or social media. It's kind of laughable, but like, I don't listen to their music. I would have to say, like, even when I started covering this, I guess I kind of had preconceived notions of like maybe I did want to go off on like really trying to hit them hard for being like occultist and into certain things. And then like I guess like actually like listening to interviews and reading more of the stuff, I was like, I guess this really wasn't the direction I thought I was going in. And then I was like, how do you present this? Because like I'm so used to like a lot of times everything always being hit pieces. You know what I'm saying?
No, I totally get it. And
Yeah,
sometimes that's okay.
especially like not to like knock my boy. You know, I still respect him. I still think as an occultist and a magician, he knows his shit. But like I was so used to like everything always being a hit piece with Lux. Everything was always supposed to be like point at the fucking bad guy. You know what I'm saying? So like I was always like thinking it had to be like that. And I'm like, this doesn't quite fit. And I was like, then like if I don't shit on him, people are gonna think I'm fucking retarded. And like, I'm like, you know what? I don't even care.
I want to shout out Colby and Lisa. I didn't even look at the chat the whole night, and I probably should, but like Lisa answered several of the points I made, and I appreciate that. I'll have to read them back. And Colby, I'm live streaming with, or we're doing something.
Oh, nice.
I don't even know. Very soon, and I have it marked down. So, but I want to shout him out because he's there. So.
Oh, nice. Hey, I want to shout out Opus. Over on Twitter, they were actually emailing me, telling me it was a good choice, and sent me some stuff about ICP, and then they sent me a live I think they're doing now. So shout out to them as well. Well, thank you very much, Jen, for covering this with me. I guess like what I was saying, like this topic, like even I guess kind of pushed me to just I guess look at things just more. This is how it is. Again, I'm not trying to promote them, but they do seem to have. Part of the reasons why at first I was like, oh, I'll include some of this stuff to at least show that they have some sort of conception of God and believe in God. But I mean, regardless of how they act and how they look, they seem to be saying something a little bit differently in their music, I guess. But just in the long run, really my whole opinion on this And it is not in a bad sense. Just like really anybody else I'd probably cover on here. Unless I say so, unless I say otherwise. It's really more of just saying, like, here, I think there's these people are occultists. They're enlightened. They may understand occult sciences, not that everybody else does. And maybe you would just never guess it, you know, or they've been in front of your face and you'd never notice it. That's what I'm saying about Insane Clown Posse. That is my conclusion with them. I do think Shaggy Too Dope, Violent J, and some of the people they work with. I mean, obviously, I mean, Esham, and I mean, even DJ Paul from 3-6 Mafia. I mean, I think those people are kind of like, no shit. I think they are occultists or magicians of somewhat. So that is my take on this episode. Thank you very much for helping me with that again, Jen. Thank you everybody else too. Dana jumping in late. We're just about to wrap it up. Thank you for stopping by though. So thank you everybody else too in the chat. That's what's up. That was even another thing too. I was like, I don't even know how well this will go live. I do appreciate everybody chatting it up in there, and it was actually a pretty lively, entertaining chat, and there was actually some good stuff added in there that I would suggest to go back and look at if you could check out the live. This live may only be up if you're catching it now or a little bit later. It will only be up maybe for a few days, and eventually it will just drop in a few weeks on its own. So, if you want to catch the live, try to get it sooner than later. If you're listening to it on the audio, it's already too late. My bad. But you could also check out the video, because the video, sometimes I will throw up some of the comments that will add to the show or something. I think that's funny. So check out that. And again, thank you everybody in the chat. That is what's up. That's why I go live. I appreciate it. I had a good time. And I appreciate you spending your Saturday night with me and Jen. That's what's up as well. Jen, let everybody know before we wrap it up where they can find all your amazing work.
Sure. So thanks, Nick, for asking me to do this. I actually think it was really fun, this one. And Miracles was the song that won me over because it was positive. And really, you can't be oriented. If you're oriented to something that's life affirming, I feel like it doesn't really matter what you believe because you can't judge a man by his thoughts. You can only judge a man by his fruits. And so their fruits seem to prosper and be happy and healthy. So I'm going to go with that. So they're magicians. I'm cool with that. I think it's cool. That's fine. It's not Nick, it's me. So me. Okay. So Twitter, Wukong Reborn, WUKONG Reborn. Also Twitter, Threshold Saints. That's just the podcast feed, so you can just see or anything that I guessed if I guest appear like this show. And it will also be on my link tree, which are in both. And Instagram is Threshold Saints, and Threshold Saints on Spotify and Anchor. And yeah, check me out. And I'm trying to do interesting work that kind of fits in with the rejects, but isn't quite the same as what everyone else is doing.
Yes, and that's why I have you part of the rejects, because you do things differently. So thank you. I always love having you on, Jen, and always love having your perspective on things.
Appreciate you.
Yes,
Thank
I
you.
always learn as well. His links will be in the bottom. And that is the end of another Occult Rejects. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.
Later.